Chapter 380. Go back and tell Yuan Wudao that I'm going to kill him. No one can stop him. Chu Kuangren said coldly. 1,000,000,000 soul stones? Was that a lot? Besides the fact that the Black Heaven sect did not lack soul stones, 1,000,000,000 soul stones were nothing compared to the lives of the Black Heaven sect's disciples. Brother Chu, do you really have to go this far? Black Willow Sage's expression darkened. However, Chu Kuangren did not care. He sat calmly on his chair and even took a sip of tea. That's all I have to say. Get lost. Chu Kuangren, you've gone too far. Black Willow Sage was furious. What's wrong? As a demonic cultivator, I'm letting you go now. Do you have anything to complain about? Chu Kuangren looked up and said. He did not have a good impression of the unknown lands, and he hated demonic unknown lands like the Acheron Manor even more. It was especially so after Yuan Wudao instructed the Underworld Palace to poison the Black Heaven sect. If it were not for the fact that the Black Heaven sect had yet to set up a formation to deal with the unknown lands, he would have killed Yuan Wudao. I can leave, but I must take back Wudao's yin and yang ring. Black Willow Sage suppressed his anger and said, Oh, so you care about that yin and yang ring. Chu Kuangren chuckled and took out a jade amulet. It was the heavenly jade amulet that he obtained from Yuan Wudao's yin and yang ring. He played with it in his hand and looked at Black Willow Sage. What do you care about, the yin and yang ring or this heavenly jade amulet? You know about this jade amulet? Black Willow Sage's expression changed. That should not be possible. After so many years, the records of the emperors in the outside world should have been mostly cleaned up by the unknown lands. How did Chu Kuangren know about this heavenly jade amulet? So what if I know? So what if I don't know? I'm taking this jade amulet anyway, Chu Kuangren said. Black Willow Sage looked at Chu Kuangren and said, Brother Chu, aren't you afraid of becoming a public enemy? Chu Kuangren, who was playing with the jade amulet, stopped. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Black Willow Sage also felt an inexplicable pressure in the grand hall, which made him wary. Everyone's target, haven't I been one for a long time? Acheron Manor, do you dare to try first? Black Willow Saint was silent for a while. Then he snorted, Goodbye. He turned and left. Even though he was a great sage, he still didn't dare to use force. When Chu Kuangren threatened the Heavenly Golden Palace, many of the unknown lands had secretly investigated the Bottomless Chasm's current situation. They knew that the Bottomless Chasm was heavily damaged, and all of this was most likely related to Chu Kuangren. Sect leader, Elder Ruyan could not help but look at Chu Kuangren worriedly. As intelligent as she was, she could also sense the current situation that Chu Kuangren and the Black Heaven sect were in. Leave everything to me. Chu Kuangren did not say much. However, these 4 words inexplicably made Elder Ruyan feel at ease. The Black Heaven sect will advance and retreat together with the sect leader. Life and death. Elder Ruyan said firmly. What life and death? Don't exaggerate it so much. It's just a few shameless places. Why are you making it sound like the end of the world? Chu Kuangren chuckled and pretended to be relaxed. At this moment, his communication artifact vibrated. It's me. What's the matter? Sect leader Chu, something bad has happened. The batch of cloud flow or that you requested has been robbed in the outer seas. Boss Qian's voice came from the communication artifact. A cold glint flashed across Chu Kuangren's eyes when he heard that. Tell me what happened. We're not sure either. Just a while ago, the team that was transporting the cloud flow or was robbed in the outer seas. Who did it? I'm not sure. It's an emergency, so we're still investigating. Alright, I understand. I'll go there myself, Chu Kuangren said. He then turned off the communication artifact. After that, he gave Elder Ruyan some instructions and left the Black Heaven sect. He then turned into a stream of light and flew towards the outer seas. Outer seas. A few large ships docked at the shore of Ravengale Island. Many people disembarked from the ships, and most of them were shackled as they were chased onto the island. Brother, what should we do with the ores on the ships? A man dressed in black asked a golden core cultivator. The nascent soul cultivator looked at the piles and piles of cloud flow ore on the ships behind him and licked his lips. These ores are worth a lot. Find a place to store them and sell them when the time comes. Where should we put them? Besides, with so many ores, it'll be easy for us to be discovered. If the elders find out that we're secretly storing ores, we'll suffer. If only we had a high-grade yin and yang ring. The black-robed cultivator said helplessly. Most low-level cultivators did not have a yin and yang ring. Even if they did, it would be a low-grade yin and yang ring that was 1 or 2 cubic meters in size. I do have one here, but I can't store all of them. The golden core cultivator pondered for a while and said, "How about this? Get someone to hide 1/3 of the ores in a nearby valley. As for the remaining 2/3, hand it over to the elders." There was no way they could secretly consume so many ores. All right. The two of them split up. Not long after, an elder came. "How's it going?" "Elder, we've captured a total of 1,360 people this time. Including the ones we've captured before, we've gathered 10,000 people. It's enough for us to sacrifice to the serpent deity," the golden core cultivator said. Then he brought the elder to a few merchant ships. When he saw the cloud flow ore, the elder's eyes lit up. "Oh, so many cloud flow ore, and they're all top tier too. They're worth a lot. Wait, this is the Four Seas Merchant Guild's ship." The elder looked at the merchant ship in surprise. However, he did not take it to heart. The Four Seas Merchant Guild was indeed famous, but Ravengale Island did not have much business with them anyway. "Lu Jia, you've done well this time. When the sacrificial ceremony is over, I'll promote you as a true disciple." "Thank you, Elder," Lu Jia said happily. "Gather everyone now. We'll head to the serpent deity's oceanic territory tomorrow." The next day, a large ship carrying tens of thousands of people left Ravengale Island. On this day, Chu Kuangren had also arrived at the outer seas. Although the Four Seas firm had yet to investigate the identity of the person who had stolen the cloud flow ore, Chu Kuangren had the treasure locating skill, which gave him a keen sense of treasure. With so many cloud flow ores gathered together, the fluctuations they emitted were enough for Chu Kuangren to sense them from tens of thousands of miles away. He used the treasure locating skill all the way and finally locked onto an island. This island was huge, and there were many smaller islands scattered around it. Moreover, there were more than 100,000 cultivators living there. It was obviously an extraordinary orthodoxy in the outer seas. However, Chu Kuangren did not care about that. He came to the sky above the largest island, raised his hand, and gathered the spiritual qi. In an instant, the wind and clouds around him surged, and a horrifying surge of Daoist rhymes spread in all directions with Chu Kuangren at the center. All the cultivators on the island sensed this extraordinary aura, and they all looked towards the sky with their mouths agape. Chapter 381. On Ravengale Island, a majestic spiritual power gathered and formed into a huge vortex. Its extraordinary aura was felt by every cultivator on the island. Even one of the sages on the island was shocked. This aura, could it be the Ravengale Island sage, the old man with the aquiline nose who went to the school of White Lotus to retrieve the Ravenblade sage's corpse, suddenly opened his eyes. He stared at the sky above Ravengale Island with a horrified expression. There was no mistaking that aura. D*Gemenet, how did he get here? The old man with the aquiline nose cursed and quickly flew out. In the sky, Chu Kuangren gathered his spiritual power and a majestic Buddhist light appeared, which then turned into a huge golden palm that descended from the sky. Before the palm arrived, the entire Ravengale Island was already shaking. What a horrifying palm energy! I wonder if Ravengale Island will be annihilated if this palm strikes. No, we must block it. The cultivators of Ravengale Island were terrified. Some of the strong cultivators on the island joined forces and unleashed wave after wave of Daoist rhymes that blasted towards the golden palm. However, the palm was unstoppable. When the Daoist rhymes landed on it, they were easily destroyed like bubbles. 1,000 meters, 700 meters, 500 meters, 300 meters, as the palm approached the island, the horrifying pressure caused some of the weaker cultivators on Ravengale Island to explode and die. Even the battle monarchs and honorables could not withstand such power. They all fell to their knees and looked at the descending palm in horror. At that critical moment, a figure appeared in front of the crowd. It was the old man with the aquiline nose. He roared and channeled his spiritual power. Sage Daoist rhymes erupted and formed a black barrier in front of the palm. The moment the two collided, the entire island shook violently. "Block it!" The old man with the aquiline nose growled and channeled his spiritual power desperately. However, the black barrier that he had created was unable to withstand this palm strike. It shattered with a loud bang, and the huge palm strike smashed onto the island. The earth-shattering explosion shook the ocean. The ground that was hit by the palm caved in, causing smoke and dust to billow out. The ground shattered, and huge cracks spread out like a spider web. A storm was stirred up, and countless cultivators were sent flying. With the island as the center, the waves continued to spread outwards. When everything calmed down, everyone was greeted by the sight of a devastated land and a shattered island. A huge hole appeared in the middle of Blackwind Island. Waves surged in the middle, and with the hole as the center, huge cracks spread out, directly dividing the entire Blackwind Island into more than a dozen pieces. Everyone was shocked by this scene. They stared at the white-robed Chu Kuangren who was hovering in midair. Their eyes were filled with hatred and deep fear. The talon-shaped nose old man stared at Chu Kuangren in the sky and roared furiously, "Chu Kuangren, what the hell are you trying to do?" Chu Kuangren's gaze was as cold as ice. "I'm the one who asked you what you're planning to do. Have you eaten a dragon's liver or a phoenix's gallbladder? How dare you touch my things?" The aquiline-nosed old man was stunned for a moment, and then he was a little confused. Since when did they touch Chu Kuangren's things? "What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Hand over the cloud flow or otherwise, I will make Blackwind Island sink into the sea today." Hearing Chu Kuangren's words, an old man in the crowd suddenly turned pale. The disciple next to him did not fare any better. His legs turned to jelly, and he immediately fell to the ground, terrified. "The cloud flow or that batch of cloud flow or belongs to you." The Blackwind Island elder looked at Chu Kuangren and said in horror. Hearing that, the aquiline-nosed old man also regained his senses. He did not expect Blackwind Island to really take Chu Kuangren's things. What the hell is going on? The aquiline-nosed old man stared at that elder and shouted. He even had the intention to skin that elder alive. "You know that Chu Kuangren is powerful and not to be messed with, yet you still went to find trouble with him. Are you not digging your own grave? It doesn't matter if you die, but why drag Blackwind Island into this?" The aquiline-nosed old man wanted to cry, but no tears came out. "Dear sage, this is what happened. When we were capturing the offerings, we caught a merchant ship, and there was a pile of cloud flow ore on it." That elder explained the incident in detail. He looked at Lu Jia, who robbed the merchant ship, with a murderous glare. "Of all people to rob, why did you have to rob Chu Kuangren?" Lu Jia's face was even paler. He was so scared that his heart was about to burst. He looked at the black-robed cultivator beside him with a murderous glare. It was all because of this guy. If not for his idea to rob the merchant ship, he and Blackwind Island would not have indirectly provoked Chu Kuangren. The black-robed cultivator looked around but could not find anyone. He also looked at Lu Jia with a sullen expression. "Can you blame me for this? If you want to blame someone, blame the serpent deity. If not for him wanting the offerings, we would not have gone out to sea to capture people and provoke Chu Kuangren. Quickly take it out." The aquiline-nosed old man shouted at the elder. That elder had no choice but to obediently take out a yin and yang ring. Chu Kuangren sucked it into his hand and used his spiritual thought to activate it. Then, his expression turned cold. "You guys are messing with me. The cloud flow or here is not all, there's still more." He wanted 10 million kilograms of top-tier cloud flow ore, and there were only 7 to 8 million kilograms here. Obviously, there were still a few million kilograms left. "Sect leader Chu, this is really all the cloud flow ore that we have. We really didn't lie to you," the elder said innocently. Beside him, Lu Jia's face was pale, and his expression kept changing. He did not dare to come out and explain, because he was the one who took the rest of the cloud flow ore. If word got out, the elders would definitely not let him off the hook. Besides, Chu Kuangren still had the sages and the elders to back him up. He was just an insignificant person. No matter what, Chu Kuangren would not implicate him. Besides, the cloud flow or was hidden so well that Chu Kuangren would never find it. Very good, very good. You didn't lie to me. Chu Kuangren sneered. He activated his treasure locating skill and dashed towards a certain direction. The aquiline-nosed old man and the others followed suit. Soon, the group arrived at a valley. The valley was very quiet and empty. At first glance, there was nothing at all. However, Chu Kuangren came in front of a mountain wall. In the blink of an eye, a sword chi shot out. When the sword chi landed on the mountain wall, it seemed to have hit an invisible barrier. A cave appeared on the mountain wall. It was a maze. The cave was hidden. If one did not pay attention, one would not be able to see anything unusual even if they used their spiritual thoughts to scan it. Hidden inside the cave were a few million kilograms of cloud flow or. Seeing this, Lu Jia's face turned pale in an instant. The elder's body shuddered. Then, as if he had figured out something, he looked at Lu Jia and roared, "I'll kill you." With a palm attack, Lu Jia was blasted into a mist of blood. Chu Kuangren looked at the scene coldly without a change in his expression. He then kept the remaining cloud flow or into his yin and yang ring. Then he said, "You robbed my cloud flow or and even tried to steal a portion of it after I came knocking on your door. How should I settle this score?" Chapter 382. How are we going to settle this? Everyone's eyes widened when they heard Chu Kuangren's words. How are we going to settle this? You've already taken the cloud flow or and destroyed Ravengale Island with a single palm strike. Shouldn't we be the ones to settle this with you? Chu Kuangren, you can take the cloud flow or and we won't pursue the matter of you destroying Ravengale Island. Don't you go too far. The old man with the aquiline nose suppressed his anger and said, "Pursue? What can you possibly pursue? You guys stole my stuff and made me come all the way here to get it back. You guys even tried to lie to me along the way. Let me ask you this, what can you possibly pursue from me?" Chu Kuangren asked coldly as a terrifying sword-based Daoist rhyme emanated from his body. His aura was like a mountain as it suppressed the old man with the aquiline nose. Under his aura, the old man's face turned red and his body trembled in anger. "Didn't we return everything to you? Besides, it was that disciple who hid the truth from you, not us. What else do you want? Who knows if you guys were the ones who ordered that person to do this? Now that he's exposed and killed by you guys, there's no evidence left. Do you really think I'm a pushover? If you don't give me an explanation today, I won't let this go." Chu Kuangren snorted coldly. The old man with the aquiline nose and the others were dumbfounded. They had never seen such a shameless person before. How could Chu Kuangren be so unreasonable after destroying Ravengale Island with a single palm strike and now he wanted them to give him an explanation? However, what else could they say when Chu Kuangren was so powerful? "State your terms." The old man with the aquiline nose said sullenly. "A billion soul stones. Why don't you just rob us instead?" The old man with the aquiline nose said angrily. "Bruh, don't think of me as the same as you guys. I'm a very reasonable person and would never do something like this. You." The old man with the aquiline nose was so angry that his body trembled and his face turned pale. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. All right, we'll admit defeat this time." The old man with the aquiline nose had no choice but to agree. They had no choice but to admit defeat. They could not defeat Chu Kuangren anyway. What else could he do? "I'll give you 3 months to prepare. If I don't see this batch of soul stones in the Black Heaven sect within 3 months, I'll come again." Chu Kuangren said coldly. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly remembered something. "When you robbed the merchant ship, where were those people? Don't tell me they were all killed by you." Chu Kuangren said coldly. "No, but they've been sent to the Serpent Deity's Sea region." The hook-nosed old man braced himself and said, "Snake Deity Sea area? That's right. Today is the Serpent God's sacrificial ceremony. Each of the 36 islands needs to prepare at least 10,000 people to sacrifice to the Serpent God. Upon hearing that, Chu Kuangren could not help but erupt with rage. Tell me, during every sacrificial ceremony, at least hundreds of thousands of people would be eaten by that so-called serpent deity, right? Yes. Did you kidnap all these people? Chu Kuangren, this is the 36 Oceanic Islands' internal affairs. Are you going to interfere in this as well? The hook-nosed old man said coldly. Heh, as long as you don't harm the people under my Black Heaven Sect's jurisdiction, it doesn't matter. However, these people who transport the cloud flow or are considered to be working for me, so I'm going to interfere in this sacrificial ceremony no matter what. Chu Kuangren said coldly. Are you going to go against the serpent deity of the 36 Oceanic Islands just for a few low-level cultivators and even some common people? The hook-nosed old man was in disbelief. How could this guy always do things that were beyond the comprehension of the world? Cut the crap. Bring me to the serpent deity's sea region. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. All right. I'd like to see what you can do to the serpent deity under the 36 Oceanic Islands' watchful eyes. The hook-nosed old man said coldly. He had his own plans when he agreed to Chu Kuangren's conditions. 1 billion soul stones was too much for the Ravengale Island. If they could borrow the serpent deity's power, they might be able to take care of Chu Kuangren. When that happened, they would not have to pay soul stones anymore. Let's go. The hook-nosed old man brought Chu Kuangren to the serpent deity's sea region. At this time, somewhere in the sea, 36 gigantic ships slowly gathered, and on each ship was a group of people who were tied up. These people were tied up on the deck, and their faces were ashen. It was as if they had already guessed what would happen to them. In the end, 36 ships gathered together. Greetings, island chieftains. How have you been? The Ravengale Island chieftain greeted the chieftains on the deck. Greetings, Ravengale Island chieftain. Sapphire Island chieftain, these offerings of yours look pretty good. Ha, you're too kind. The chieftains of the 36 Oceanic Islands greeted each other. At the same time, they were also secretly observing each other's offerings. Every time they offered a sacrifice, the 36 Oceanic Islands would secretly compare their offerings. Whoever offered the best would receive the serpent deity's blessing. That was the consensus of the 36 Oceanic Islands. For example, the previous island chieftain of Ravengale Island, the Ravenblade Sage, sacrificed his companion to the serpent deity in order to become a sage. In return, he received a tribulation treasure and successfully became a sage. Oh, the Sapphire Island chieftain has brought quite a lot of people. Everyone looked at the Sapphire Island chieftain. They saw that the ships of the other party were densely packed with people. There were at least 30 to 40,000 of them, and every single one of them was a strong and muscular man. Many of them were even cultivators. Sob sob. A series of crying sounds could be heard. Everyone looked over and their eyes narrowed. On one of the ships, there were children who looked to be only 7 or 8 years old. These children seemed to have sensed something and were crying loudly. Father, mother, where are you? Sob sob, I want to go home. An old man in a white robe stood on the ship. He held a walking stick in his hand and looked kind and friendly. Heh, 3,000 young boys and girls. Sorry for the embarrassment. The old man chuckled. The rest of the chieftains looked at him with fear. 3,000 young boys and girls. TSK, this White Smoke Island chieftain sure is a lunatic to do something like this. I'm impressed. Looks like the White Smoke Island chieftain has come out on top this time. The people on the other ships who were used as sacrifices were livid when they saw the 3,000 young boys and girls. Be asterisk stards. How dare you do such a thing? Those are a bunch of children. Bastards, bastards. You deserve to die 1,000 times. F asterisk CKU. Be asterisk stards. If you still have a shred of conscience, let them go. Come at us if you dare. Be asterisk stards. You will all die a horrible death. However, no matter how much the people cursed, the chieftains of the 36 Oceanic Islands remained unmoved and looked at them coldly. They had long gotten used to this. Every time we offer sacrifices to the serpent deity, these sacrifices are always so noisy. They're like flies. One of the chieftains curled his lips. Let them scold us. It won't take long anyway. Judging by the time, the serpent deity should be here soon. Chapter 383. Amidst the clamor of the crowd, a huge black shadow gradually emerged from the surface of the sea. The chieftains immediately knelt down on the deck respectfully. Soon, a gigantic snake head the size of a small hill emerged from the surface of the sea. It was a greenish-black snake head, with a pair of pale yellow eyes that were cold and merciless. What caught everyone's attention was the peculiar horn that grew on the snake's head. Daoist rhymes swirled around the horn, giving off a terrifying power. The noisy crowd felt as if they had been plunged into an icehouse when they saw the giant snake. They were so frightened that they could not speak. "Greetings, serpent deity. Greetings, serpent deity." The chieftains of the 36 oceanic islands greeted respectfully. The serpent deity ignored them. Its cold eyes swept across the offerings on the 36 ships. When it saw the 3,000 young boys and girls, a look of admiration appeared in its eyes. "White Smoke Island chieftain, you've done well." The serpent deity spoke. It sounded like a man's voice, but it was extremely sharp, as if it was about to pierce through one's eardrums. The 3,000 young boys and girls cried even louder when they heard the voice. "Thank you for the compliment, serpent deity. As long as the serpent deity is satisfied, I'm willing to sacrifice my life for you," White Smoke Island chieftain said excitedly. "Very well. I'm going to enjoy the offerings now. You guys can leave first," the serpent deity said calmly. "Yes." The chieftains of the 36 oceanic islands got up and flew away from the ships. After they left, the serpent deity dove back into the sea. However, a deathly chill filled the entire surface of the sea. Just then, a huge tail emerged from the sea, splashing water as it slammed into one of the ships. With a loud bang, the ship broke apart. Tens of thousands of people fell into the sea, screaming in fear. The serpent deity opened its mouth and sucked one person after another into its mouth. The surface of the sea was instantly dyed red with blood. "No, help. Sob, I don't want to die." Cries of agony could be heard from the sea. Some cultivators wanted to resist, but the might of the serpent deity was not something that these low-level cultivators could withstand. The serpent deity devoured people very quickly. With a single breath, it sucked in hundreds of people. It did not even need to chew to swallow them. Before long, tens of thousands of people were buried in the serpent deity's stomach. But this was only the sacrifice for the first ship. To the serpent god, it was just an appetizer. His cold yellow snake eyes looked at the boat carrying the 3,000 boys and girls, and he couldn't help but lick his lips. "Let's save the best for last." The serpent god then cast his gaze at the other ship. With a flick of its tail, the ship broke apart. Countless people fell into the water, and screams of fear rose and fell. The scene from before continued to play out. Tens of thousands of cultivators and commoners were devoured by the serpent deity. High up in the air, the island leaders of the 36 islands watched on coldly. There was no trace of pity on their faces. They were used to this. 1 ship, 2 ships, 3 ships, more than 10 large ships sank to the bottom of the sea, and more than 100,000 people were buried in the snake's stomach. At that moment, the serpent deity had already arrived in front of Blackwind Island's ship. Some of the people captured here were the people from the Four Seas trading firm who were escorting the cloud flow, at this moment, their faces were filled with despair. "I never thought that I would have to pay with my life for just escorting a batch of oars, and in such a manner." "Me too. Damn it, I don't want to die yet." An old man had his eyes closed. Suddenly, a powerful aura erupted from his body. While the serpent god was approaching him, he threw a punch with all his might. The punch swept across the sky, creating waves of air. He even used some kind of secret technique that burned his life for this punch. Elder Lu. This old man was the leader of the team that escorted the oars. He was a golden core cultivator, but he was injured by the disciples of Blackwind Island and had been secretly healing himself ever since he was brought to this ship. Now that he had recovered and burned his life, his attack power had reached the nascent soul level. However, when this punch landed on the serpent deity's head, it burst like a bubble. The serpent god merely looked at him playfully, not feeling anything at all. As expected, it's useless. Elder Lu smiled bitterly. How could a mere golden core cultivator like him, who was worshipped by the 36 islands as a god? In the next moment he was directly swallowed into the serpent god's stomach. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Don't eat me, don't eat me. Angry shouts and pleas for mercy were heard one after another. The entire ship was shrouded in despair. It's over. A young woman closed her eyes, preparing to die. Suddenly, she seemed to hear some kind of rumbling sound. This sound was very prominent in the midst of all the shouting and cursing. She could not help but open her eyes. She saw that the serpent god, who was about to devour everyone, was raising its head and staring at the sky. There was a hint of seriousness in its eyes. The rumbling sound that the young woman heard came from the sky as well. The rumbling sound did not stop. It was as if something was piercing through the sky and was about to break through the void. The island lords looked towards the source of the sound. What is it? There it is. They saw a terrifying wave of air descending from the sky above the serpent god. Upon closer inspection, they realized that it was a sword. It was a beautiful white jade long sword. A sword that caused the island masters of the 36 Isles to suck in a breath of cold air. The beautiful sword pierced through the sky and landed on the serpent god's head with a loud bang. The terrifying force smashed the serpent god's head into the sea, creating a huge pillar of water and waves. The surrounding ships were pushed away by the waves. It's him! Damn it, why is he here? The island lords of the 36 oceanic islands stared at the surface of the sea. The water pillar fell like a rainstorm. Amidst the mist, everyone could only see a white-robed figure standing on the surface of the water. That person held a beautiful ancient sword in his hand. He was dressed in white and had black hair. His face was so handsome that it did not look like it belonged to this world. It was Chu Kuangren. When he saw the wreckage of dozens of ships and the sea that was dyed red with blood, he knew that he was too late. After all, many people had died in the hands of the serpent god. When he saw the 3,000 wailing boys and girls, an incomparably blazing killing intent surged in his chest. He glanced at the 36 oceanic islands' island lords in the sky. The coldness in his eyes sent chills down their spines. Can anyone tell me what's going on? Why is Chu Kuangren here? One of the island lords asked in fear. Chu Kuangren was too famous in the firmament star. They could even call him the best in the world. I'm the one who brought him here. At that moment, the talon-shaped nose old man appeared in front of everyone. The Ravengale Island Lord's expression changed when he saw him. He hurriedly bowed and asked, "Sage, what's going on?" The talon-shaped nose old man briefly explained what happened. He then said coldly, "Chu Kuangren is too much of a threat. Today is the perfect time for the serpent god to get rid of him." The other island lords breathed a sigh of relief when they heard that. That's right, we still have the serpent god. They knew very well how powerful the serpent god was. Chapter 384. Chu Kuangren stood proudly on the surface of the ocean. He glanced at the ships around him and then took out the elusive mirage. The gigantic elusive mirage appeared on the surface of the ocean, stirring up huge waves. Then, he channeled his spiritual power to lift the ship that carried the 3,000 boys and girls and placed it on the elusive mirage. He did the same thing and placed the rest of the ships on the elusive mirage. With the elusive mirage's size, it could easily fit all of the ships on it. Just as he placed the last ship on the elusive mirage, a gigantic whirlpool suddenly appeared on the surface of the ocean. That whirlpool almost engulfed the entire elusive mirage. The elusive mirage shook violently. The serpent deity wanted to drag the elusive mirage to the bottom of the ocean and devour the remaining offerings. Humph, what a fool! Chu Kuangren snorted. If it were an ordinary ship, even one as big as the elusive mirage, it would have been dragged to the bottom of the ocean by the serpent deity's power. However, the elusive mirage was no ordinary ship. Chu Kuangren had long mastered the elusive mirage, so he activated the defensive formation on it. A gigantic light barrier immediately enveloped the elusive mirage. No matter how the serpent deity manipulated the whirlpool, it could no longer be affected. In the end, the elusive mirage rose into the air and escaped from the whirlpool. Chu Kuangren stood on the surface of the ocean and stared at the whirlpool. He saw a gigantic serpent head slowly stretching out from within. A pair of cold, yellow eyes stared at Chu Kuangren. It had taken a sword attack from Chu Kuangren, but it did not seem to be injured. Only a few scales were missing from its head. Its physical strength was even stronger than the 9-headed snakelets. "Why are you stopping me from eating?" the serpent deity said sharply. "My people are among those you want to eat. Besides, how dare a lowly beast like you eat humans as it pleases? You deserve death. These are my offerings. If you want to find them, go find the ones who sent them here," the serpent deity said coldly. "Of course, after I kill you." "What a joke." "Me?" Chu Kuangren said no more. A terrifying surge of sword-based Daoist rhyme erupted from his body as he activated his 3 great Daoist physique. With a slash of the sword, the power of the 10,000 Dharma, the murderous aura, and the sword chi fused together. A dazzling sword light directly split the sea. The snake god narrowed its eyes slightly in the face of the majestic sword. It let out a low roar, and the seawater around it began to boil rapidly. Pillars of water erupted, smashing toward the sword chi with a terrifying impact. Boom, boom, boom. The majestic sword chi collided with the water pillars one after another, and a large amount of water vapor exploded, forming a mist that filled the sky. Just when Chu Kuangren was about to continue his attack, a gigantic tail swung at him from the side. The force of the tail was so great that it could shatter a mountain range. Even a sage's body could not withstand it. Demon subduing palm. Chu Kuangren channeled his spiritual power and the vast Buddhist light transformed into a giant golden hand. The moment the two forces collided, Chu Kuangren felt an unprecedented force shattering the giant golden hand. The snake's tail ruthlessly whipped his body, and a terrifying power exploded, directly crushing his limbs and bones. His entire person turned into minced meat that filled the sky and exploded on the spot. High up in the sky, the chieftains of the 36 oceanic islands were dumbfounded at the sight. Chu Kuangren, whose name had shaken the world, had died just like that? As expected of the snake deity. How impressive! He's too strong. Chu Kuangren is nothing compared to the snake deity. The talon-shaped nose old man was in disbelief. That was Chu Kuangren's, yet he was whipped to death just like that. Why does this feel so unreal? On the surface of the sea, the snake deity could not help but sneer at Chu Kuangren's minced meat. You talk big, but your abilities are not worth mentioning. Suddenly, he sensed that something was not right. Even after Chu Kuangren was killed, the descendant self-sword was still floating on the surface of the sea with strands of sword chi surrounding it. The sword owner is already dead, so why is the sword still so magical? What's going on? Could it be? The snake deity's eyes trembled. Suddenly, it saw the pile of minced meat on the surface of the sea crazily gathering together, forming into a lump of meat. The lump of meat gradually formed into a human figure. It was Chu Kuangren. He was not dead yet. How is this possible? He can still revive after being smashed into pieces? The snake deity was dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren stretched his body and took out a set of clothes from his yin and yang ring to cover his newly reborn body. However, aside from a few female cultivators, no one cared about that. They all looked at Chu Kuangren in disbelief. Rebirth after being smashed into pieces? Even for a saint, this kind of thing was like a fantasy. The power of the snake deity is indeed something. Chu Kuangren looked at the snake deity and activated his eye of revelation. Hua Shi is an ancient wild beast with a sage ruler cultivation level. Compared to his spiritual power, his physical strength is not to be underestimated. Based on the strength of both parties, the host's chance of winning is less than 10%. Please be careful. Less than 10%. Chu Kuangren smiled and held the descendant's self-sword. But I won't lose either. His eyes lit up with battle intent. His figure turned into a stream of light and a majestic sword chi wrapped around his body as he dashed towards the snake deity. "I'd like to see if you're really immortal," the serpent deity roared. A sound wave that felt like it was a solid substance quickly spread as it spat out a water column that contained an extremely powerful force towards Chu Kuangren. Just as Chu Kuangren was about to get close, the sword chi on his body suddenly dissipated and transformed into many sword chi clones. Chu Kuangren then took out the sacred emerald sword case. Countless treasured swords flew out and were distributed to the sword chi clones to attack the serpent deity together. The sky was filled with sword chi as it continuously slashed out. The battle between Chu Kuangren and the serpent deity was extremely intense. The entire ocean shook and tsunamis were set off. Even the islands thousands of miles away were affected, and some smaller islands could not escape the fate of being submerged. Clang. Guqin music rang out. Chu Kuangren sat cross-legged in the void with the descendant self-sword guarding beside him. The lingering song was placed horizontally in front of his knees, and a majestic Guqin Daoist rhyme erupted. The sixth movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords, raging waves crashing. The seventh movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords, heaven and earth reverberation. The final movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords, grand note of desolation. 3 terrifying Guqin music waves blasted towards the serpent deity along with waves of seawater. The terrifying energy caused the scales on the serpent deity to crack. Roar! The serpent deity let out a roar, and a terrifying Daoist rhyme that was infused with spiritual power swept out like a tsunami, shattering all the sword chi clones. Then, a large amount of seawater gushed out. Under the serpent deity's control, the seawater surrounded Chu Kuangren and formed a giant water prison that trapped him. The water prison was surrounded by an extremely powerful barrier. Chu Kuangren tried to break through it, but it was to no avail. At that moment, Chu Kuangren felt like he was in the deep sea. "Let's see how you're going to fight me now." The serpent deity laughed and entered the water prison. At that moment, Chu Kuangren finally saw the serpent deity's full appearance. Its body was more than 1,000 feet long, and its entire body was greenish-black with a white abdomen. There was a single horn on its head, and there were some protruding spots on its back. Chu Kuangren knew that those were the serpent deity's hidden wings. The serpent deity was an ancient ferocious beast that loved to eat humans. It had a single horn on its head and a pair of wings on its back. It was a serpent beast that was on par with the 9-headed snakelet. Chapter 385. Die. The serpent deity let out a low growl, and the water in the water prison suddenly turned into invisible restraints that bound Chu Kuangren's limbs. Then, the serpent god charged forward. His physical strength was extremely terrifying. If he were to collide with him, even a mountain peak would be instantly smashed into pieces. Chu Kuangren being smashed into pieces by his tail was the best example. At that moment, a chi barrier appeared out of nowhere on Chu Kuangren's body. A large amount of water power was isolated, and the sword chi penetrated his body, shattering the water that was binding him. Then, his figure turned into a stream of light, dodging the serpent deity's attack. The snake god was a little surprised. "You can actually break free?" It should be known that even a great saint-level existence wouldn't be able to break free from the restraints of water that he had unleashed with his cultivation base. Yet Chu Kuangren, who was below the level of a sage, was able to break free so easily. "That's not right, the energy shield on your body." Suddenly, the serpent deity noticed something. It looked at the force field on Chu Kuangren's body, and a look of realization flashed across its eyes. "I see. I didn't expect you to have a treasure that can isolate the torrential force." He was very surprised and at the same time, a little angry. The reason he activated this water prison was so that Chu Kuangren would have to fight underwater. That way, Chu Kuangren's combat strength would be greatly reduced. That way, he would be able to defeat his opponent faster. He didn't expect the other party to have an artifact that could isolate the flow of water. "There are a lot of things that you can't imagine." Chu Kuangren sneered. The treasure he had on him that could block out the power of water was the water-repellent pearl. In the past, he had relied on this treasure to wreak havoc in the Scaled tribe. He held the Descendant Self-Sword in his hand and activated his 3 Daoist forms, starting a new round of fierce battle with the Serpent Deity in the water. With his immortal body, he wasn't afraid of the Serpent Deity's attacks at all, and he fought it head-on. Heaven-slaying sword-drawing art, Tathagata rebirth mantra, heart-piercing finger, raging god's fist, and other monarch techniques were all used as they charged toward the Serpent Deity. This is too scary. He's not even a sage yet, but he has so many emperor techniques. Is he a monster? How did he do it? Monster. Also, what's with that immortal body? In the air, the island lords of the 36 oceanic islands were dumbfounded. They knew that Chu Kuangren was powerful, but they never expected him to be this powerful. One emperor technique after another, not to mention a sage, even an emperor might not necessarily have so many emperor techniques. This kid is indeed strong. No wonder he could shake the entire firmament star. However, no matter how strong he is, he can only be defeated by the Serpent Deity, the aquiline-nosed old man said lightly. When the other island masters heard this, they looked at the battle and agreed with him. No matter what kind of emperor technique Chu Kuangren cast, the Serpent Deity was able to withstand every single attack with its powerful physical body. At most, he would suffer some light injuries. The Serpent Deity, who had ruled the seas for so many years and was worshipped as a deity by the 36 islands, was undoubtedly powerful. The Serpent Deity could be said to be one of the most powerful beings in the entire firmament star. Even the unknown lands would not easily provoke them. Chu Kuangren, even someone like you will only end up as food for the Serpent Deity. You will pay the price for your arrogance. The talon-shaped nose old man stared coldly at Chu Kuangren. Inside the water prison, the battle between Chu Kuangren and the Serpent Deity was in full swing. One of them had an extremely powerful physical body that could withstand an emperor technique head-on. The other had an immortal body that made him fearless. This guy is really unimaginable. His battle prowess has actually reached such a level. I've never heard of such a thing since ancient times. If he's already this strong despite being below the level of a sage, doesn't that mean that he'll be invincible even without an emperor in the future? Terrifying. The Serpent Deity stared at Chu Kuangren, its yellow eyes filled with an unprecedented cold murderous intent. Against an enemy like Chu Kuangren, it would be a very scary thing if it did not finish him off as soon as possible. Even the Serpent Deity could not help but feel terrified when it thought of what Chu Kuangren would become in the future. This Serpent Deity is even harder to deal with than the 9-headed snakelet. Chu Kuangren frowned as he looked at the Serpent Deity. The 9-headed snakelet's physical body had been destroyed for many years, and it did not even have half of its original strength when it first came back to life. However, this Serpent Deity was a true sage ruler. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Should he use the Soul Retriever? No way. His opponent was a sage ruler. His soul was extremely powerful and he was not injured either. His state of mind was at its peak. If he used the Soul Retriever, his spiritual power would be depleted before he could hook his opponent's soul out. Should he use the 4-season sword formation? That was unlikely. With his current strength, even if he used the strongest form of the 4-season sword formation, he would not be able to hurt his opponent. Not to mention that the force of water in this water prison would affect the sword formation, making it difficult for him to maximize its power. Young lad, your immortal body is indeed strange, but I can tell that your strength is limited even though you're immortal. I'll seal you into the deep sea and make you my prisoner. Then, I'll slowly figure out a way to kill you. The Serpent Deity said coldly as a large amount of Daoist rhymes surged from its body. The entire water prison merged into the sea, and at the same time, an extremely powerful force dragged Chu Kuangren into the deep sea. Not long after, Chu Kuangren was dragged hundreds of kilometers into the sea by the Serpent Deity and arrived at a huge oceanic trench. Within this oceanic trench, there were specks of light circulating. They were all crystals and supreme elixirs that emitted rich spiritual power. There was a large number of treasures in the sea here. You're surprised, aren't you? The sea is far more vast and mysterious than you can imagine. Even the scaled tribe, who are known as the rulers of the sea, have only explored the tip of the iceberg. However, I'm different. I'm the serpent deity. I'm the strongest existence in the sea. The sea is like my backyard. I can go wherever I want and take whatever I want. These are the treasures that I've collected from the sea. There's a coral tree that can double one's cultivation speed, a shell that can withstand heavenly lightning, a supreme elixir that can help one break through realms easily. The serpent deity excitedly showed Chu Kuangren its collection. It was not worried that Chu Kuangren could take these things away. To it, Chu Kuangren was already a sitting duck. The 36 oceanic islands sacrificed themselves to you for these treasures, right? Chu Kuangren said as he looked at the treasures in the oceanic trench. That's right. They've captured these sacrifices for me. If anyone performs well, I'll give them some of the treasures that I don't want. It's all thanks to me that the 36 oceanic islands can reach such heights today. The serpent deity laughed as it dragged Chu Kuangren towards the oceanic trench. Soon, they arrived at the deepest part of the oceanic trench. There was a huge cage that looked like a bird cage, and there were strange black patterns flowing on it. I obtained this cage 10,000 years ago. It must be a treasure left behind by a powerful cultivator. It has a terrifying sealing power that even a sage ruler would be sealed inside. Kid, you can stay in there for the rest of your life. The serpent deity laughed before it channeled a majestic torrential force and forcefully stuffed Chu Kuangren into the cage. Chapter 386. Rays of strange light blossomed from within the black cage, and the countless strange runes engraved on it began to circulate. A terrifying sealing force appeared. Chu Kuangren felt as if the spiritual power within his body was being suppressed. When he slashed with his sword, the power that he could display was actually not even a tenth of it. The rest was completely suppressed by the cage. That's not possible. This cage can even seal a holy king, let alone a small person like you who has yet to become a sage. The serpent deity looked at Chu Kuangren with its yellow eyes and smiled. Kid, you should also become part of my collection. You should feel honored to be able to spend the rest of your life with so many treasures. The serpent god laughed. I didn't expect you to be a collector. Chu Kuangren could not help but chuckle at the serpent deity's words. Brat, you're actually still able to laugh under such circumstances? I can't help but admire you. Do you really think that you can do whatever you want just because you have an undying body? You won't die, but there are many ways to torture people in this world. Don't worry, I will use them on you one by one. The serpent deity coiled its body and stared at Chu Kuangren with its huge yellow eyes, revealing a bloodthirsty, cruel, and murderous intent. He wanted to see fear on Chu Kuangren's face, but unfortunately, Chu Kuangren's gaze remained calm from the beginning to the end. It was like a cold pond, without ripples since ancient times. His eyes met the snake god's. The snake god was clearly the stronger party, but for some reason, he felt a little flustered. It's impossible for this fellow to escape from this cage. I must be overthinking things. I'll just lock him up here for now. The snake god thought to himself. Then, it turned around and was about to leave the trench. But at this moment, Chu Kuangren suddenly spoke from behind him. You have so many treasures here. Is there even a single emperor weapon? Upon hearing this, the serpent god was a little confused. Why are you still concerned about this at a time like this? Imperial weapons are hard to come by. How can they be so easily obtained? To be honest, I haven't found a single imperial weapon in the tens of thousands of years I've been in the deep sea. But what does that have to do with you? Snake God sneered. Sigh, what a pity. You'd better feel sorry for yourself. You're a great genius. You'll have to spend the rest of your days in the deep sea. You should feel honored. That's because you've never obtained an imperial armament in all these years. However, today, you're fortunate enough to experience one. Chu Kuangren said as he raised his hand and clenched the void. A golden trident appeared in Chu Kuangren's hand, and an incredibly terrifying emperor's aura spread across the ocean. The cage that imprisoned him was shaking violently. The runes on it cracked one by one, and the sealing power was constantly disintegrating. The serpent god's eyes widened. Imperial weapon. He was stunned. He did not expect Chu Kuangren to have an emperor weapon in his possession. An emperor weapon was extremely rare, even in the unknown lands. To think that Chu Kuangren had an emperor weapon in his possession. I'll show you the might of a monarch weapon. Chu Kuangren gripped the trident in his hand and struck it fiercely. A terrifying domineering aura suddenly exploded, causing the entire ocean to tremble violently. Countless streams of water surrounded Chu Kuangren, obeying his command as they continuously attacked the cage that was imprisoning him. Countless runes shattered one by one. In the end, with a loud bang, the cage that was imprisoning Chu Kuangren completely exploded, turning into pieces of debris that scattered everywhere. That's the Sea King's halberd. It's the Scaled Tribe's Sea King's halberd. Rumor has it that this emperor weapon was split into 3 and disappeared a long time ago. How did you get it? The serpent god was horrified. Having been in the ocean for so many years, he knew many of its secrets. Naturally, that included the rumors about the Scaled Tribe's Sea King's halberd. Even though he was a sage ruler, he was nothing in front of an emperor weapon. He did not expect Chu Kuangren to have such a precious treasure. He did not expect the emperor weapon to be the long-lost Sea King's halberd. I've never used this Sea King's halberd ever since I refined it. Today, I'll use you to test it out. Chu Kuangren said coldly. With the Sea King's halberd in hand, his aura increased exponentially. The sea waters surged as if the entire ocean was cheering for him. At that moment, he no longer needed the water evasion pearl. Because the ocean no longer posed any threat to him. The power of the Sea King's halberd was to control the ocean. With the Sea King's halberd in hand, Chu Kuangren dashed towards the serpent god. His speed was 3 times faster than when he was on land. With a swing of the halberd, an endless torrential force surrounded it. It was as if the force of the entire ocean was imbued into the serpent god's body. Amidst the explosion, the serpent god's scales shattered and blood splattered everywhere. Since the beginning of the battle, this was the first time the serpent god had suffered a serious injury, and it was all from a single strike of the halberd. D****. So what if it's the Sea King's halberd? I'm the serpent god. The serpent god roared and let out a piercing shriek. Its Daoist rhyme was pushed to its limit as its 1,000-meter-long body tumbled in the ocean. A terrifying torrential force then slammed towards Chu Kuangren. That attack was incredibly shocking. Even a peak great sage would not be able to withstand it. However, Chu Kuangren held the trident halberd in his hand and pointed it at the incoming torrential force. A mysterious Daoist rhyme then emerged. Shatter! With a soft shout, that powerful torrential force suddenly dissipated. Wielding the Sea King's halberd means that I control the ocean. What can this bit of torrential force do to me? Chu Kuangren sneered and raised his hand to activate the Sea King's halberd. He then said, I'll show you what the wrath of the ocean looks like. With a wave of the Sea King's halberd, the surrounding water surged and formed into a gigantic whirlpool that surrounded the serpent god. These whirlpools contained a powerful tearing force. Even the serpent god's powerful body could not help but crack in the whirlpools. Pieces of its scales broke and a large amount of blood gushed out. Ah! The serpent god let out a shrill scream. It looked at Chu Kuangren in horror. The emperor weapon's power was too terrifying. Even a sage ruler like it could not fight against it. If this went on, it would be the serpent god that would be buried in the ocean. Run! The serpent god let out a low roar before the horn on its head unleashed an intense Daoist rhyme. The whirlpools around it were temporarily sealed by that surge of energy. Then, a pair of fleshy wings spread out from the serpent god's back before it flew towards the ocean. Trying to escape? No way! A cold glare shot out from Chu Kuangren's eyes. If I don't strip your snake skin and turn it into a gunny sack, I'm not Chu Kuangren anymore. Torrential force emerged from beneath his feet and propelled him towards the ocean surface to chase after the serpent god. Above the ocean, the 36 oceanic chieftains and the talon-shaped nose old man were staring at the ocean surface with bewildered expressions. This was because they had just felt a powerful surge of Emperor's aura, and then the entire ocean started to surge. It was a terrifying sight to behold. That surge of energy must be the serpent god's doing. Chu Kuangren has offended the serpent god, so he must die. That's right. It must be the serpent god, the chieftains said with anticipation in their eyes. At that moment, a huge black shadow appeared on the ocean surface. The serpent god with wings on its back had suddenly emerged from the ocean surface. The serpent god. It's the serpent god. Chapter 387. The serpent deity broke out of the sea and soared into the sky. The people of the 36 oceanic islands could not help but exclaim, "It's the serpent deity! It's the serpent deity!" However, they soon realized that something was not right. It was too pathetic. The serpent deity was in a pathetic state. Its scales were broken, and there were cracks all over its body. Large amounts of blood were dripping from it. It was their first time seeing the serpent deity in such a state. They were all dumbfounded. Needless to say, the person who caused the serpent deity to be in such a state must be Chu Kuangren. The people could not believe that Chu Kuangren could force the serpent deity into such a state. What did he do? The talon-shaped nose old man gulped. He initially wanted to use the serpent deity's strength to kill Chu Kuangren, but it seemed like he had made the wrong decision. Not to mention using the serpent deity's strength to kill Chu Kuangren, it seemed like the serpent deity could not even protect itself now. Was Chu Kuangren really that terrifying? Boom! At that moment, the ocean shook. A giant water pillar shot into the sky, and Chu Kuangren was standing on top of it with his trident in hand. He stared coldly at the serpent deity that was flying towards the clouds. With a swing of his trident, multiple water pillars erupted and shot into the sky like water dragons that coiled around the serpent deity. The serpent god roared and used its powerful body to charge around, shattering the streams of water. However, even if it could break the water pillars, it could not get too far away from the ocean, let alone escape. B****, let me leave. Do you really want to fight me to the death? The serpent deity let out a sharp roar. The people of the 36 oceanic islands were shocked to hear that. They felt goosebumps all over their bodies. The serpent deity was trying to escape. It was trying to escape from Chu Kuangren. This news was too shocking to them. To the people of the 36 oceanic islands, the serpent deity was their god. It could be said that without the serpent deity, the 36 oceanic islands would not have developed to where they were today. Hence, they respected the serpent deity like a god. Even the sages listened to the serpent deity. Yet now, their deity was trying to escape from Chu Kuangren. It was just too unbelievable. This almost caused their worldview to collapse. A life and death struggle? You're not fit to fight me to the death. I've said that I'll skin you alive and turn you into a sack, so you must die here. Chu Kuangren sneered as he activated the Empyrean Neptune's trident halberd. Streams of even more majestic water surged toward the serpent god. The entire sea was boiling, and countless sea creatures were trembling. That was Chu Kuangren's rage. Now, it was also the anger of the entire ocean. Bastard! You forced me to do this. The infuriated serpent deity roared, and the Daoist rhymes on its body exploded. Its yellow eyes gradually became bloodshot, and a terrifying murderous aura erupted from the serpent deity, sweeping in all directions. Oh, forcefully using a secret technique to increase your strength? So what? Chu Kuangren sneered. Disregarding external factors, Chu Kuangren only had a 10% chance of winning against the serpent deity. However, with the Empyrean Neptune's halberd, his chances of winning had skyrocketed to almost 100%. This was the terror of a monarch weapon. The serpent deity let out a shrill roar, and a powerful Daoist rhyme spread out, shattering a giant water column. Then, it dashed toward a certain direction. That was where the elusive mirage was located. The serpent deity knew very well that even if it used some kind of secret technique, it was still no match for Chu Kuangren with the Empyrean Neptune's trident halberd. Hence, it decided to use the hundreds of thousands of cultivators and civilians on the elusive mirage as a threat to force Chu Kuangren to let it leave. It believed that humans were all hypocrites, especially a righteous person like Chu Kuangren. He would definitely be threatened, especially when there were 3,000 young boys and girls on the elusive mirage. Oh no, the serpent deity is here. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators and civilians on the elusive mirage were terrified. However, when the serpent deity approached, it crashed into an invisible barrier that blocked him outside. Although the elusive mirage was shaken, it was unharmed. The hundreds of thousands of people on it were also unharmed. How could this be? The serpent deity was dumbfounded. The serpent deity was well aware of his own strength. Even 10 mountains would have been obliterated by that one crash, yet it was blocked by the elusive mirage's defensive barrier. How could the elusive mirage's defensive formation be so terrifying? What a fool. Chu Kuangren snorted. The elusive mirage was a top-notch starlight-grade item, and the defensive formation on it was also a top-notch sage-grade formation. Moreover, it did not require Chu Kuangren to control it. As long as the elusive mirage had enough power, it would be able to unleash its full potential. Although the serpent deity was powerful, it could not break through this sage-grade formation. Now die. Chu Kuangren let out a low roar, and blood-red flames suddenly ignited on his body. The 9 deaths blazing blood art activated. Chu Kuangren channeled a large amount of spiritual power into the Empyrean Neptune's trident halberd, allowing him to summon more oceanic force. A large amount of water gushed out from the ocean and gradually formed into a ferocious and powerful water dragon in the sky. The water dragon was tens of thousands of meters long, and its terrifying domineering aura filled the air. Every cultivator at the scene, including sages like the talon-shaped nose old man, trembled in fear. In front of the water dragon, the serpent deity's 1,000-meter body seemed tiny. No. The serpent deity was terrified. After devouring countless living beings for so many years, the serpent deity, who had always been fearful of others, finally felt fear. An unprecedented sense of fear. Die. Chu Kuangren waved his halberd, and the water dragon roared and swallowed the serpent deity with a surge of water pressure. The serpent deity, who had always eaten others, swallowed something else for the first time in its life. Meanwhile, inside the water dragon's body, the terrifying water waves ravaged and destroyed its body. Its scales, bones, and flesh were all broken, and a large amount of fresh blood dyed the water dragon red. In the end, the water dragon collapsed and fell back into the ocean, causing a huge explosion and a huge tsunami to spread in all directions. Meanwhile, the serpent deity was floating on the surface of the ocean. With the Empyrean Neptune's halberd in hand, Chu Kuangren approached the serpent deity. Kid, you're too much of a monster. This world will never tolerate you. Your fate will be 1,000,000 times worse than mine. The serpent deity looked at Chu Kuangren and said in a hoarse voice, I was the one who couldn't tolerate this world, but now, I can't tolerate you either. Chu Kuangren snorted and unleashed the soul retriever. The chain pierced into the serpent deity's body and slowly pulled out its soul, which had become extremely weak due to the imminent death of its physical body. Enjoy the agony of the soul. Chu Kuangren gently tugged on the soul retriever, and a surge of chilling energy erupted, continuously eroding the serpent deity's soul. A shrill scream reverberated through the air, and finally, the serpent deity's soul shattered into countless soul light dots. Just as these soul light dots were about to vanish, Chu Kuangren activated his universal cauldron physique and absorbed these soul light dots into his body. The universal cauldron physique could absorb all kinds of strange energies between heaven and earth. Souls were also a type of strange energy. Chapter 388. Even in a weakened state, a sage ruler's soul energy was still extremely majestic. Just like the demonic liquid, this energy was stored within Chu Kuangren's body, waiting for him to form the supreme sage foundation level in the future. After that, Chu Kuangren tossed the serpent deity's corpse into his yin and yang ring. Including the 9-headed snakelet from before, Chu Kuangren now had 2 sage ruler corpses in his possession. Not to mention the boundary emperor's body that he had obtained from the unnamed island. These were all important materials for him to form the supreme sage foundation level in the future. Now, only you are left. Chu Kuangren looked at the chieftains of the 36 oceanic islands. His eyes were as cold as ice and filled with murderous intent. The chieftains of the 36 oceanic islands wanted to leave but found that they could not move. Chu Kuangren, what do you want? The hook-nosed old man gulped and said. Since even the serpent deity had been killed by Chu Kuangren, none of them dared to challenge Chu Kuangren at all. Too terrifying, this young man in front of him was too terrifying. Throughout the ages, there wasn't a single person like him. All of you kill yourselves? Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Hearing this, everyone's pupils shrank. Chu Kuangren, please spare us. One of the island lords begged for mercy. That's right, Chu Kuangren. We have no enmity with you, so there's no need for you to become enemies with us for the sake of these commoners. The 36 islands have many sages as well. Chu Kuangren, do you really have to go this far? The chieftains of the 36 oceanic islands spoke one after another. Chu Kuangren said indifferently, if you kill yourselves now, your orthodoxies may be spared. If you resist, the 36 oceanic islands shall perish in the ocean. As soon as Chu Kuangren finished speaking, the entire ocean began to roar and surge, setting off huge waves as if it was responding to his words. With the Empyrean Neptune's halberd in his hand, Chu Kuangren was the ruler of the ocean. No one beneath the Emperor realm could fight him at sea. Since the 36 oceanic islands were located in the outer seas, Chu Kuangren was no longer afraid of the bottomless chasm. Hearing his words, the chieftains of the 36 oceanic islands turned ashen. After witnessing Chu Kuangren's capabilities, none of them doubted Chu Kuangren's words. He truly had the ability to do it. Chu Kuangren, are you sure you won't even give us a chance? An island lord said unwillingly. Swoosh! At that moment, a white figure dashed towards Chu Kuangren at a speed no slower than a sage. It was the White Smoke Island Lord. His originally benevolent face was now filled with malevolence. With a dagger in his hand, he swung it at Chu Kuangren. That dagger contained some kind of poison that could even kill a sage. Chu Kuangren, die. The White Smoke Island Lord said in a frenzy. However, Chu Kuangren narrowed his eyes and moved the Empyrean Neptune's halberd in his hand. A powerful torrent of water burst forth, forming a huge water ball that enveloped White Smoke Island Lord. No matter how hard White Smoke Island Lord struggled, it was all to no avail. He was like a drowning man, flailing his arms and legs about as if he was trying to grab onto something. Chu Kuangren reached his hand into the water ball and grabbed the dagger in his opponent's hand. Then he slowly stabbed it into his opponent's chest. The poison erupted, and White Smoke Island Lord's face instantly turned purple. Blood flowed from all 7 of his orifices, and he breathed his last within moments. In the end, he died under his own poisonous blade. Which island does he belong to? Chu Kuangren asked. The other island lords looked at each other. In the end, one of the island lords could no longer withstand the terrifying pressure that filled the void. With a trembling voice, he said, "By White Smoke Island. White Smoke Island. I understand now." The crowd was puzzled, not knowing what Chu Kuangren was trying to do. However, he suddenly closed his eyes, and his spiritual thoughts spread out like a tidal wave. With the help of the Empyrean Neptune's halberd, not only could his spiritual thoughts see the entire ocean, but he could even hear the sounds of the ocean. Soon, he locked onto the location of White Smoke Island. It looked like an immortal island, but under the coverage of Chu Kuangren's spiritual thoughts, he could see that the inside of the island was filthy. The cultivators were all scheming against each other, and some were even cultivating various evil techniques. He even saw an elder using children to refine medicinal pills. An immortal island? No, it was a demonic den. A demonic den that was even more evil than the other demonic orthodoxies. Perish, Chu Kuangren said calmly. That one sentence set off a terrifying tsunami from thousands of kilometers away, rushing towards White Smoke Island. The cultivators of White Smoke Island were terrified when they sensed it. What's going on? The White Smoke Island sage rushed out and looked at the gigantic tsunami in horror. Quick, activate the island's protective formation. The White Smoke Island sage yelled. A gigantic white light barrier enveloped White Smoke Island. However, it was useless. Under the terrifying tsunami, White Smoke Island's protective formation was like a bubble. The moment it came into contact with the tsunami, it shattered and vanished into thin air. The entire White Smoke Island was submerged in the ocean. In just a few breaths' time, the island was destroyed, and countless disciples were killed by the tsunami. The White Smoke Island sage was not faring well either. He was severely injured by the tsunami. His hair was disheveled, and he spat out mouthfuls of blood. He stared at the ocean before him with hatred. But what did White Smoke Island do wrong? Serpent deity, why didn't you protect us? He would never have guessed that White Smoke Island was in such dire straits just because the White Smoke Island Lord wanted to live. The serpent deity that he spoke of had died under Chu Kuangren's halberd. One tsunami, and White Smoke Island was no more. And all of this was because of a single thought from Chu Kuangren, who was thousands of kilometers away. The destruction of White Smoke Island had attracted the attention of the other 36 oceanic island sages. One by one, their spiritual thoughts searched the ocean, trying to find the cause of the tsunami. In the serpent deity's oceanic domain, the talon-shaped nose old man opened his eyes in horror. White Smoke Island is gone. The remaining chieftains were terrified to the core. Their bodies trembled as they stared at Chu Kuangren as if he was a demon. They knew that it was all Chu Kuangren's doing. With the divine Neptune's halberd in hand, Chu Kuangren was like a deity that could control the entire ocean. He could even destroy an island from thousands of kilometers away. Chu Kuangren, you're a demon. You destroyed White Smoke Island for these sacrifices. That's hundreds of thousands of lives. One of the chieftains could not help but ask, so what? The serpent deity's sacrificial ceremony has been held many times, hasn't it? The number of people you've sacrificed to the serpent deity is more than millions. Chu Kuangren said coldly. None of the chieftains could refute his words. I'll give you one last chance. Kill yourselves, or I'll unleash a few more tsunamis. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. All of you kill yourselves? At that moment, a voice came from the void. One of the chieftains' expression changed. It's a sage. Kill yourselves. Kill yourselves. One voice after another rang out from the void. Those were the voices of the 36 oceanic island sages. With each voice, the chieftains' faces turned paler. In the end, their faces were drained of all color, and their hearts were dead silent. Even their sages wanted them dead. Chapter 389. Kill yourself. Kill yourself. Voices rang out one after another in the air. These were all the sages of the 36 oceanic islands. They had already investigated the whole story and were terrified of Chu Kuangren's power. In order to protect their orthodoxies, they had no choice but to let these chieftains commit suicide. The chieftains of the 36 oceanic islands were pale and bloodless. If Chu Kuangren wanted them dead, they would only feel resentful. But now, their own sages wanted them to die, and they felt a sense of sorrow from the depths of their souls. It turned out that the greatest pain did not come from the enemy. Instead, it was the betrayal of their own people. Ha, Chu Kuangren, I admit defeat this time. If anything happens to Green Jade Island, I'll haunt you even if I become a ghost. The Lord of Green Jade Island laughed out loud. His body exuded a strong sense of sorrow. Following that, his body expanded abruptly. With a loud explosion, the Lord of Green Jade Island turned into a mist of blood that filled the sky. Seeing this, the rest of the island masters showed signs of struggle in their eyes. However, under such circumstances, resistance was useless. Chu Kuangren wanted them dead. The saint wanted them dead. How could they, the supremes, resist? He might as well be more straightforward. Chu Kuangren, if you dare to harm a single hair on my Peony Island, I won't let you go either. The island lord of Peony Island shouted coldly. Then, with a delicate shout, she also self-detonated after the island lord of Cyan Jade Island. Chu Kuangren, I shall seek revenge on you in my next life. Ha, I never thought I would end up like this. Ridiculous, ridiculous. One after another, the island masters self-destructed. There were also those who were indignant and wanted to escape. One of the island masters turned into a stream of light and flew into the distance. However, he was slapped back by a majestic palm chi. That palm chi did not come from Chu Kuangren but from a sage. Kill yourself. Don't force me to take action. The saint's cold voice came from the void. The island master's heart was like dead ashes. In the end, he could only clench his teeth and self-detonate. Very soon, the 36 island masters were all dead. As Chu Kuangren witnessed the scene unfold, he too suffered the curses of some of the chieftains before they died. However, his expression did not change from the beginning to the end. Chu Kuangren, let's end this matter here. The voice of a saint resounded from the void of space. Yeah. Chu Kuangren suddenly held his forehead and let out a burst of laughter. The sages did not know what he meant. Sage, this is a sage? Everyone in the world says that a saint is the pillar of orthodoxy. Today is the first time I've seen a saint forcing his own people to die. Is this the so-called saint, the so-called pillar of heaven? Ha! It's so funny. The sages fell silent. In other words, they were so angry that they couldn't speak. On the surface of the ocean, only Chu Kuangren's maniacal laughter and the hundreds of thousands of cultivators and commoners were left in shock. Chu Kuangren laughed so hard that tears were about to come out of his eyes. Enough! The furious voice of a sage came from the void. Chu Kuangren's laughter was extremely piercing to their ears, and every single word he said was like a stab to their hearts. It was obvious that Chu Kuangren was the one who forced her to do this. In the end, he was still making fun of them. This was the so-called killing one's heart. Chu Kuangren's laughter gradually subsided, and the surface of the sea also gradually calmed down. He kept his Empyrean Neptune's halberd, turned around, and dashed towards the elusive mirage. Before he left, he was still mumbling something. A voice echoed in the air. A sage? F***CKU sages? Those words were heard by the sages of the 36 oceanic islands. Many sages' Daoist core almost collapsed on the spot. On one of the islands, a terrifying aura erupted, and a mountain range was forcefully shattered. An old man walked out from it, staring into the distance with bloodshot eyes. His expression was as ferocious as a demon. Chu Kuangren, he gritted his teeth in extreme hatred. However, when he thought of Chu Kuangren's terrifying strength, a sense of helplessness welled up in his heart, and it was mixed with anger. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. In the end, he spat out a mouthful of blood and almost fainted. How can such a person exist in this world? In the 36 oceanic islands, there was more than one sage who spat out blood like the old man, and some of them even had their Daoist core collapsed. Chu Kuangren, goddamn Chu Kuangren. Ah, Chu Kuangren, you will die a horrible death. I hate you. Dear heavens, why do you allow someone like Chu Kuangren to exist in this world? He is an anomaly that cannot be tolerated by the heavens. Even the serpent deity was killed by him. What a pity. The 36 oceanic islands' disciples were extremely confused. Why did the sages, who were rarely seen, suddenly unleash such intense energy fluctuations? Moreover, there was also a sense of helplessness and anger in those fluctuations. Who was it? Who made the sages so angry but helpless? On this day, the entire ocean was in turmoil. Chu Kuangren returned to the elusive mirage. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators were excited and looked at him with admiration. However, he ignored them and went straight to a room, where he activated the seal that was previously placed in that room. When he was done, Chu Kuangren's face turned pale, and his body went limp as he sat on the bed. F***ck me, Emperor weapons really shouldn't be used so casually. Chu Kuangren took a deep breath and said, while imperial armaments were very powerful, the burden of forcibly using them with his cultivation was not to be looked down upon. Just this time, he had almost exhausted all of his spiritual power. However, his spiritual power was secondary. After all, his gluttonous devouring technique could convert blood and flesh essences to quickly recover, but it was more of a burden on his mind. Using an emperor weapon was equivalent to using the emperor's aura, which was a huge challenge to a cultivator's Daoist rhyme, Daoist core, and spiritual will. I'm lucky to be able to fool them this time. Chu Kuangren took a deep breath and murmured. He took out a few medicinal pills and consumed them to recover his spiritual power. As for his mind, both his mind and spiritual thoughts originated from his soul, and there were very few soul techniques on Firmament Star. Soul power could only be improved through the improvement of one's cultivation realm, so even Chu Kuangren could only wait for his recovery. There were some treasures that could improve soul power, but those were extremely rare, and Chu Kuangren did not have them yet. Chu Kuangren spent 3 days recovering his spiritual power, and the rest of the time was used to recover his mind. It was not until 3 days later that Chu Kuangren finally walked out of his room. As soon as he walked out, he was met with hundreds of thousands of cultivators who knelt on the ground when they saw him. "Thank you, Sect Leader Chu, for saving our lives." "Thank you, Sect Leader Chu, for saving our lives." Hundreds of thousands of people knelt in front of Chu Kuangren and looked at him emotionally. The 3,000 young boys and girls did not cry anymore. Instead, they knelt on the ground with the adults around them and looked at Chu Kuangren with curiosity in their clear eyes. "Get up, everyone," Chu Kuangren said calmly. When he saw that some of them were injured, he casually cast the spring breeze healing technique. As the spring breeze blew, some of the injured people began to recover. Chapter 390. With Chu Kuangren's help, some of the injured cultivators began to recover. Then, Chu Kuangren asked, "Who's from the Four Seas Merchant Guild?" "We're the escorts from the guild." At that moment, a few people walked out one after another. Chu Kuangren glanced at them and said, "All right, send a message to Boss Qian. Tell him to wait for me at a nearby prefecture." "Boss Qian? Which Boss Qian?" The few of them looked at each other. With their status, they didn't even know Qian Fugue, the head manager behind the scenes of the Chamber of Commerce, let alone contact him. "Forget it, I'll talk to him myself," Chu Kuangren said. Then, he looked at the bottom of the sea with a glint in his eyes. He licked his lips and dived deeper into the sea. With the help of the water evasion pearl, he soon arrived at the trench where the serpent deity hid his treasures. Looking at the countless treasures in the sea, he smiled. "Serpent deity, I'll gladly accept this." These sea treasures had been plundered by the serpent deity over the years. They were too valuable. Even if all the resources of the 36 islands were added up, they might not be able to match up to half of these treasures. This was definitely one of the largest treasure vaults in the Firmament Star. Chu Kuangren searched the trench and threw the treasures into his yin and yang ring. The rewards were unimaginable. What's this?" Suddenly, Chu Kuangren looked at the light blue coral-like supreme treasure herb in his hand. He could not help but feel surprised. There were many treasures in the sea that he did not recognize. The reason why he paid attention to this supreme treasure herb was because it gave him a strange fluctuation. Whenever he got close to it, he would feel refreshed. That feeling seemed to originate from his soul. Could this supreme treasure herb have an effect on the soul? Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. Even an alchemy grandmaster like me can't recognize this supreme treasure herb. Then he used his treasure locating skill to sense it. He found out the name of this supreme treasure herb. Soul Nourishing Herb. Soul Nourishing, Soul Nourishing. It seemed like it really was a supreme treasure herb that had an effect on the soul. Chu Kuangren carefully put it away. After a round of looting, Chu Kuangren left in satisfaction. He returned to the elusive mirage and left the sea with the others. In a Dao province outside the sea, Qian Fugue had long received Chu Kuangren's message, so he had brought some people to wait here. When they saw the gigantic elusive mirage, they immediately went up to greet it. "Sect Leader Chu." Qian Fugue glanced at the hundreds of thousands of people behind Chu Kuangren, especially the 3,000 young boys and girls. A hint of anger flashed across his eyes. That serpent god and the 36 islands are truly despicable. They would even lay their hands on children. Qian Fugue cursed. He had also learned about the matter of sacrificing the serpent god. "I've already obtained the cloud flow or..." "Thank you, Boss Qian." Also, I'll leave these people to you. Chu Kuangren said. No problem. Leave it to me. Qian Fugui patted his chest and said, he had many connections and channels, and his business was spread all over the country. It was easy for him to settle these people down. All right, that's all for now. Chu Kuangren nodded and was about to leave. Take care, benefactor. Farewell, benefactor. Farewell, benefactor. The hundreds of thousands of people and cultivators behind Chu Kuangren said. The 3,000 young boys and girls looked at Chu Kuangren's departing figure with yearning in their eyes. One of the boys said, in the future, I want to become a powerful cultivator like you, benefactor. I want to protect everyone. Me too. Me too. Black Heaven Sect. Chu Kuangren went into a busy state the moment he returned. The cloud flow and celestial chalcedony were already in place. All that was left was to set up the astonishing cloud of seas formation. However, this formation was extremely mysterious. Even with the blueprint, he had only managed to set up 1/10 of it after a few days. This formation is too mysterious and I don't know much about it. Besides, there aren't many people in the Black Heaven sect who know how to set up formations. This is going to be difficult. Chu Kuangren shook his head. He did not want to look for people in the outside world. If he did that, he could not guarantee that they would not leak the core secrets of the formation. Just like that, Chu Kuangren studied the formation by himself while he set up the astonishing cloud of seas formation. Fortunately, he had an amazing level of comprehension. Under such circumstances, he was able to learn by himself and improve by leaps and bounds. The speed at which he set up the formation increased. About a month later, he had completed the astonishing cloud of seas formation. It's finally done. Chu Kuangren stood on top of a mountain peak. His spiritual thoughts surged and covered a radius of 10,000 kilometers around the Black Heaven sect. Within 10,000 kilometers, every node of the astonishing cloud of seas formation could be seen. As long as he gave the command, this emperor-grade formation could be activated. With this formation around, the safety of the Black Heaven sect can be guaranteed. Chu Kuangren smiled in satisfaction as he felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. He was now at the cusp of the storm, and he could be targeted by the unknown lands at any time. It would not have mattered if he was alone, but he could not. He still had the Black Heaven sect behind him. If the unknown lands attacked the Black Heaven sect, it would be difficult for the Black Heaven sect to defend themselves. Now that he had this formation, he could deal with the unknown lands easily even if they attacked. Let's do a lucky draw to celebrate. Chu Kuangren grinned. Congratulations, host. You've obtained the legendary item, Elysium Emperor Scripture. Another Emperor Scripture. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. He looked at his inventory and then set up a few restrictions around it before retrieving the Emperor Scripture. In an instant, a thick Emperor's aura spread out. However, because of the restrictions that Chu Kuangren had set up, it did not spread out. He began to flip through the Emperor Scripture. This is a Talisman Emperor Scripture? Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised. The Elysium Emperor Scripture came from an emperor known as the Great Elysium Emperor. This Great Elysium Emperor used talismans to become an emperor, so the Emperor Scriptures that he left behind were mostly related to various kinds of runes. Chu Kuangren had long studied the Tao of runes. He knew how mysterious it was, and he had always been looking forward to it. Now that he had this Emperor Scripture, he could learn it. In the following days, Chu Kuangren went into closed-door meditation again. Until 3 days later, firmament stars suddenly trembled. A giant palace suddenly appeared out of thin air. After various investigations, it was found that this palace was related to the Qian Emperor. The Qian Emperor was the last emperor recorded in Firmament Star. Now that a palace that was related to him had appeared, the entire Firmament Star was shaken. Many people rushed over to investigate. Even the unknown lands could not resist such temptation. The Qian Emperor Palace has finally appeared. The rumors are true. The emperors really did leave behind all kinds of opportunities of fortune in Firmament Star. When the time is right, they will appear one by one. This era of great battles is reaching its peak. Opportunities don't come again. The Qian Emperor Palace is the first emperor's opportunity of fortune. Whoever can occupy it first will have the advantage in the subsequent emperor's opportunities of fortune. This palace must not be missed. The unknown lands began to make their moves. All the Empyrean walkers flocked to the Qian Emperor Palace. Inside the Black Heaven sect, Chu Kuangren had also come out from his closed-door meditation. Chapter 391. The Qian Emperor Palace has reappeared. Chu Kuangren took out the jade amulet that he got from Yuan Wudao. The jade amulet was glowing faintly. Chu Kuangren looked into the distance, knowing that the Qian Emperor Palace had reappeared. The unknown lands must have made their move long ago. Looks like I'll have to join in the fun as well. Chu Kuangren held the jade amulet in his hand and said. Before he left, he called Elder Ruyan over. Ruyan, I've set up a large formation in the Black Heaven sect. I'll pass you the method to activate it. If anyone from the Black Heaven sect comes to invade and you guys can't handle it, just activate it, Chu Kuangren said. He did not want his home to be invaded while he was away. Elder Ruyan nodded. All right. She was quite surprised. This sect leader knows how to set up formations? However, Chu Kuangren knew quite a few things. Now that he knew how to set up a formation, it was not something that Elder Ruyan could not accept. However, the Black Heaven sect already had a mountain guarding formation, and it was an extremely rare sage-grade formation. Could the formation that Chu Kuangren had set up be more powerful than a sage-grade formation? Elder Ruyan was doubtful. Chu Kuangren passed the method to activate the formation to Elder Ruyan. After some thought, he said, "How about this? I'll demonstrate it to you first." Chu Kuangren took out a stone tablet that was carved with celestial chalcedony. It was as clear as jade, and it was the key to activate the formation. There were markings on the stone tablet. They were the major nodes of the astonishing cloud of seas formation. He channeled his spiritual thoughts into the stone tablet. Soon, the nodes of the astonishing cloud of seas formation lit up, and the entire Black Heaven sect shook. Clouds and mist appeared out of thin air and enveloped the entire Black Heaven sect. Countless Daoist rhymes circulated like a soaring dragon in the sea of clouds. Elder Ruyan was a little dumbfounded. Just by looking at it, she could already tell that this formation was extraordinary. Through the stone tablet, she could see some of the stages of the astonishing cloud of seas formation. It was either a trap or a kill. It was extremely mysterious. This formation was not as simple as a sage-grade formation. Was this really set up by the sect leader? It was too powerful. With this formation, the Black Heaven sect will be even more secure. Elder Ruyan said excitedly. Others might not know, but she had been helping Chu Kuangren with the sect's internal affairs, so she knew quite a lot about the unknown lands. She knew very well what kind of situation Chu Kuangren and the Black Heaven sect were in, and with the help of this formation, she felt much more at ease. I'll leave the array to you. I'll leave first. Take care, Sect Master. In a flash, Chu Kuangren's figure turned into a stream of light and left. At this time, there was a sea of people outside the glorious Qian Imperial Palace. Surrounding the Qian Imperial Palace was a mysterious sealing power that enveloped the entire Qian Imperial Palace like a large net. But at this moment, the net was collapsing on its own. This sealing power should have been left behind by the Qian Emperor. The Qian Emperor must have calculated this timing to allow the Imperial Palace to appear. As such, this sealing power would naturally be useless. The saint said, "This person came from the unknown lands." He looked at the Arch Palace with a fanatical look in his eyes. An emperor's opportunity of fortune. This can be said to be the greatest and most unimaginable opportunity of fortune in the recent 150,000 years. Whoever obtains the Arch Palace will definitely have a meteoric rise. The sealing net gradually disappeared. The moment the net disappeared, a few sages flew towards the Imperial Palace, but they were repelled by an invisible barrier. What's going on? Didn't the sealing power disappear? The sages were a little surprised. At this time, a few golden words appeared in the void. Anyone below the sage level can enter. What does this mean? Sages can't enter? What kind of stupid rule is this? F***CK, are we going to come here for nothing? Some of the sages were very unwilling. They had been sages for many years, and now they were looking forward to becoming emperors. Although they knew that the emperor's opportunity of fortune was not in their generation, how could they give it up so easily when the unprecedented emperor's opportunity of fortune was right in front of them? I don't care. I must obtain this emperor's opportunity of fortune, one of the sages said unwillingly. His body surged with powerful sage Daoist rhymes as he charged towards the Qian imperial palace. However, the harder he tried, the stronger the invisible barrier became. It violently repelled him and smashed him onto the ground. That scene left everyone speechless. To many, a sage was already the pinnacle of powerhouses. However, a barrier left behind by an emperor from hundreds of thousands of years ago was enough to make a sage suffer. An emperor was truly unimaginable. It's useless. The Qian imperial palace's intention is very clear. His inheritance will only be left for future generations of sky prides. One of the sages said faintly. He then looked at the sky prides from various major forces with a hint of envy in his eyes. They could only say that they were born in the wrong era. Shuizheng, you must be careful when you enter the imperial palace this time. You must take good care of that jade amulet. It will be very useful in the imperial palace, the ethereal rapture sage reminded Shuizheng. Yes. Shuizheng nodded solemnly. The other forces were also giving their sky prides their advice. In Acheron Manor's camp. Wu Dao, although you lost your jade amulet, the imperial palace's opportunity of fortune is still here. Once you're inside, act according to the situation. Remember, don't act impulsively again, Black Willow Sage said to Yuan Wudao. Yes. Yuan Wudao nodded. His current state was a little strange. Chu Kuangren had chopped off one of his arms in the demonic hoarder forefather's secret realm, but now he had a new arm. However, his new arm was wrapped in bandages and emanated an ominous aura. The group of sky prides entered the Qian imperial palace one after another. Among them, the Empyrean walkers were the most eye-catching. To many, the biggest opportunity of fortune in the imperial palace would most likely be obtained by one of the Empyrean walkers. After all, no matter how powerful the sky prides from the other orthodoxies were, they could at most fight against honorables and supreme honorables. However, these Empyrean walkers could fight against sages. They were no longer sky prides of the same level. The reappearance of the Qian imperial palace proves that our previous guess is correct. The emperors have indeed left behind all kinds of opportunities of fortune. Some of the unknown land's sages gathered together. One of the sages said. The other sages' eyes lit up when they heard that. Looks like the act of burning the books and hiding the emperors was not in vain. Now that we're the only ones who have the records of the emperors, it'll be a great help in the fight for the emperor's opportunity of fortune in the future. That's right. Now it all depends on the sky pride's luck. The biggest opportunity of fortune in the Qian imperial palace belongs to the heavenly golden palace. Suddenly, a voice rang out. An old man walked over with a majestic gait. The Empyrean walkers of the heavenly golden palace aren't weak, but our Empyrean walkers aren't to be trifled with. Oh, are you that confident, Purple Void Sage? If the heavenly golden imperial physique fails in the imperial palace, don't turn on me. The sages looked displeased when they saw the old man. Let's wait and see. Purple Void Sage's face was filled with pride. He had great confidence in Shaolintian. Below the level of sages, there were not many Empyrean walkers who could stand up to him. Look at him. At this moment, there was a commotion from the crowd. Outside the imperial palace, a person was walking through the air. He was dressed in a wide-sleeved white robe with a beautiful ancient sword hanging from his waist. He had a celestial appearance and a charming demeanor. Many of the sages narrowed their eyes when they saw this person. Chapter 392. Chu Kuangren stepped through the air and arrived. He was dressed in a wide-sleeved white robe and his black hair cascaded down like a waterfall. The pupils of everyone couldn't help but constrict when they saw him. Chu Kuangren is here. Damn it, this Qian imperial palace. He also wants to join in the fun. If he goes in, what chance does the others have? Play my ass. There's no way to play. Everyone discussed in low voices. To everyone, Chu Kuangren was no longer on the same level as the other Sky Prides. There was no comparison between the two of them. If he were to enter the Imperial Palace, he would be able to sweep everyone. We must not let him in. Otherwise, with Chu Kuangren's abilities, this emperor's opportunity of fortune might very well be taken by him. The saints of the unknown lands looked at each other. One of the sages stood in front of Chu Kuangren and smiled. I didn't expect Brother Chu to join in the fun. Chu Kuangren glared at him. Get out of my way. The sage still had no intention of giving way. He only smiled and said, Brother Chu, you're in charge of an orthodoxy, and you're the sect master of an orthodoxy. It's not very nice for you to fight with a bunch of juniors. Junior? Heh, I have to hand it to you. You're a sage, but you don't even think before you speak. Come to think of it, I'm of the same generation as them. Of course, my status is higher than theirs, but my age is about the same. Chu Kuangren sneered. When they were beating him up, they didn't remember that he was a junior. Now that they were stopping him from entering the Emperor Palace, they remembered it. Chu Kuangren, are you really going in? The opportunity is right in front of me. It would be a waste not to take it. Whoosh, 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 one by one, the sages rushed over and blocked Chu Kuangren's way. It was obvious that they did not want him to enter the Imperial Palace. Heh, I told you guys that you guys are shameless, but you guys have really thrown away your pride. Chu Kuangren chuckled. In any case, I can't let you enter the Qian Imperial Palace. Do you think you can stop me? Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Taking a step forward, a terrifying Daoist rhyme swept out in all directions. Raising a hand, boundless spiritual energy gathered, and a vast Buddhist light manifested. The 1,000-zhang tall ancient Buddha struck out with a palm. His first move was an emperor method. Facing this powerful attack, a saint's expression changed slightly, and he also punched out, but he was sent flying by this palm. F***ck, why does it seem like this guy's strength has increased again? The sage's expression changed slightly. Just one palm attack from Chu Kuangren and he could already feel his arm going numb. Chu Kuangren's strength was a little too terrifying. Don't tell me this guy is preparing to undergo the heavenly tribulation. I remember that it hasn't been long since he broke through to the utmost exalt realm. To think that he's going through his tribulation so soon. Isn't his rate of improvement a little too fast? If he were to become a saint, wouldn't that be disastrous? The surrounding sages were discussing. Chu Kuangren did not care. He looked around at the sages surrounding him and activated the Eye of Revelation to see through their identities and cultivation levels. They were all people from the unknown lands. Only they would think of stopping Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren was the biggest obstacle in their orthodoxy's fight for the emperor's opportunity. A sincere suggestion. Let's go together. Chu Kuangren said as he placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. The sages looked at each other. I don't think any of you can stop him. Why don't you come at him together? There's no need to care about face at this time. Black Willow Saint from Acheron Manor said. Hearing his words, the rest of the sages also nodded. Indeed, even a great sage would not be able to easily stop an opponent of Chu Kuangren's level. If they wanted to stop him from entering the Imperial Palace, they would have to go at him together. I can't believe that at such an old age, I have to join a bunch of sages to stop a junior, one of the sages said with a bitter smile. The others felt helpless too. The Qian Imperial Palace was originally prepared for the Sky Prides, so it was reasonable for them to enter and fight for it. However, Chu Kuangren was different. His strength was too strong and terrifying. If he entered, the other Sky Prides would not stand a chance. Hence, the sages had no choice but to join forces to stop him. Let's go. Black Willow Saint was the first to attack. He unleashed a palm attack, and his spiritual power surged to form a black skull. The air was suddenly filled with a deathly chill. Finger of Despair. A sage from the sacred palace of death also attacked. His finger attack was an emperor technique. The rest of the sages followed suit. Chu Kuangren unsheathed his descendant self-sword and activated his 3 great Daoist physiques. His ferocious qi, battle intent, and transcendental might erupted. A dazzling sword ray tore through the sky and earth. Several surges of energy collided. The violent energy formed a horrifying shockwave that spread. The shockwave hit everyone, and even Chu Kuangren was pushed back a few meters. Suddenly he looked up into the sky. He saw a huge seal of mountains and rivers descending from the sky. That seal contained an incomparably majestic earth qi. It was the immovable manners emperor technique, the seal of mountains and rivers. Suppress him! High up in the sky, an old man roared. Chu Kuangren's ferocious qi swirled around his body and formed into a huge black avatar. Waves of battle roars echoed in the sky. The divine ferocious avatar smashed its fists into the sky. Terrifying ferocious qi surged out like a tidal wave, shaking the void. With a loud explosion, the seal of mountains and rivers was shattered. However, the other sages had already unleashed their attacks. Chu Kuangren controlled the divine ferocious avatar and continuously waved its fists in the air, unleashing surges of fist energies in all directions. The void exploded as all sorts of Daoist rhymes intertwined and collided. In the end, the divine ferocious avatar could no longer withstand the sage's attacks and shattered. Chu Kuangren himself was once again pushed back. Chu Kuangren's figure turned into a stream of light and dashed towards the imperial palace. Dream on! You want to break through our seal? Dream on! A few sages snorted and stopped Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren's speed was fast, but there were many sages who were proficient in speed as well, so they were not any slower than him. Boom, boom, sounds of explosions could be heard in the void. Chu Kuangren continued to wander in the void as if he was trying to find a way to enter the imperial palace. Unfortunately, the unknown land's sages' defense was impenetrable. They did not give Chu Kuangren the chance to do so. After a series of intense battles, Chu Kuangren still could not break through. It's too difficult. There are more than 10 sages here, and some of them are even great sages. The rest are almost at the great sage level. It won't be easy for Chu Kuangren to break through their seal. That's right. Who else can break through unless they're a sage ruler? It's rare to see more than 10 sages teaming up against a sage. Chu Kuangren, you're amazing. I'm afraid the opportunity of fortune in the imperial palace doesn't belong to Chu Kuangren anymore. What a shame. If he could enter the imperial palace, the other sky prides, including the Empyrean walkers from the unknown lands, wouldn't stand a chance. The battle continued in the void. Chu Kuangren was surrounded by more than 10 sages, and he could not break through and enter the Qian imperial palace for a long time. Chu Kuangren, even you can't break through our seal and enter the Qian imperial palace. Just give up. One of the ethereal rapture's sages laughed. Chapter 393. The ethereal rapture sage had a terrible impression of Chu Kuangren. Back then, he had taken away so many exquisite chalcedonies and even celestial cores that they could not wait to devour. The ethereal rapture sage was elated to see Chu Kuangren suffer. However, he was soon disappointed. That was because even in such a situation, he did not see the slightest hint of annoyance or displeasure on Chu Kuangren's face. That flawless face of his had always been calm. If one were to look closely, one could even see that the corner of Chu Kuangren's mouth was curled up into a nonchalant smile. This B*****, the ethereal rapture sage was soon in a bad mood. Not only him, but the other sages also felt like they had punched a pile of cotton. They could not even feel the slightest bit of force. They clearly had the upper hand and successfully stopped Chu Kuangren from entering the imperial palace, but why did they feel like they were the ones at a disadvantage? When they looked at the surrounding cultivators' strange gazes, that feeling of frustration became even more obvious. They seemed to have understood something from the crowd's gazes. A dozen sages ganged up on a junior, yet they still had the gall to be proud? A dozen sages ganged up on a junior, yet they could not even hurt a hair on him. How could they call themselves sages? It doesn't matter. As long as we can stop Chu Kuangren from entering the imperial palace, We don't have to worry about anything else. Black Willow Sage said. As a demonic orthodoxy sage, his skin was much thicker than the other sages. He did not feel guilty at all about joining forces with the other sages to attack Chu Kuangren. Hey, didn't you guys notice anything? Chu Kuangren suddenly said. Hearing his words, everyone frowned. They did not know what he meant by that. Chu Kuangren shook his head when he saw their puzzled expressions. Then he snapped his fingers. In an instant, a strange fluctuation appeared in the void. This fluctuation caused the sages present to be alarmed as they looked around cautiously. What's going on? Why is there such a fluctuation? Suddenly, lines of mysterious runes appeared in the void. Some looked like swords, some looked like flames, and some looked like beasts. All kinds of runes glowed brilliantly, looking extremely mysterious. That scene shocked all the sages present. Runes, why are there so many runes? This guy, when did he carve these symbols? Bastard, how did he do it? The sages exclaimed in shock. They never knew that Chu Kuangren knew runic techniques. Speaking of which, how did this fellow know the rune Dao? The sages were puzzled. The hundreds of thousands of onlookers were even more confused. Everyone, enjoy this hodgepodge of runes. Chu Kuangren smiled. As soon as he finished speaking, the various runes engraved in the void suddenly exploded, and all kinds of energy rushed towards the sages. The power of fire, the power of ice, the power of sword, the power of gravity. For a moment, the entire sky was overflowing with colorful lights, gorgeous and dazzling. The sages did not know that Chu Kuangren also knew runic Dao, so they were caught off guard and had to deal with the various runes in a flurry. Goodbye. Chu Kuangren did not continue to fight with these sages. Instead, he took this opportunity to fly towards the imperial palace. Dream on. The sacred palace of Death's sage roared and pointed a finger at Chu Kuangren's back. A horrifying amount of death chi converged and turned into a terrifying finger strength. Finger of despair. However, Chu Kuangren dashed towards the imperial palace without looking back. Just when that finger strength was about to hit Chu Kuangren, a golden rune appeared in the air and turned into a golden light barrier. With a loud explosion, the finger strength shattered the light barrier, but it also dissipated. It could not hurt Chu Kuangren at all. ****. The sacred palace of Death's sage cursed. This ****starred has even set up a route to enter the imperial palace. He even set up runes along the way to prevent others from pursuing him. ****. How does he know runic Dao? Runic Dao was very mysterious. There were only a few cultivators in the entire firmament star who could cultivate runic Dao to a high level. How could Chu Kuangren have such a high level of runic Dao at such a young age? The crowd was puzzled. However, they could only watch as Chu Kuangren entered the imperial palace. ****. What are the Sky Prides going to do now? The sages looked at each other. Compared to Chu Kuangren, the Sky Prides in the imperial palace were like a flock of sheep. Now that they were like a tiger in a flock of sheep, who could stop them? Sai, is this really fate? Is Chu Kuangren destined to become an emperor in this era? The Qian Imperial Palace. As the residence of an ancient emperor, this place had always been sealed in the void until today. Hence, the place did not look too shabby. On the contrary, it looked extremely glorious and majestic. Upon arriving at the imperial palace, Chu Kuangren immediately activated his treasure locating skill. All kinds of treasures and information were fed back to him. However, he frowned slightly. There are quite a lot of treasures, but most of them are sage-grade treasures. Compared to the serpent deities collection, these things are not that valuable. They're not that useful to me either. Are there no emperor-grade treasures here? Chu Kuangren thought. An emperor-grade treasure was what he wanted the most. He then used his treasure locating skill to search for a while, but he still could not find any trace of an emperor-grade treasure. Vaguely, his treasure locating skill's senses touched a strange barrier and was bounced back. He looked towards the center of the imperial palace. Oh, is it over there? After pondering for a while, Chu Kuangren began to move. The barrier that he sensed was actually a layer of sealing energy. Perhaps it was not the right time yet, so the sealed area had not appeared yet. Let's loot the other treasures first, Chu Kuangren thought to himself. Although these sage-grade treasures were not very useful to Chu Kuangren, they were still valuable cultivation resources. They would still be very useful to the Black Heaven sect. Inside the Qian Imperial Palace, a group of sky prides was gathered in a medicinal field. There were many supreme elixirs growing in this medicinal field. Even sage-grade supreme elixirs, which were extremely rare in the outside world, could be found here. Not to mention the other treasures in the Imperial Palace, just this medicinal field alone was enough to make 99% of the orthodoxies in Firmament Star go crazy. The sky prides at the scene stared at the supreme elixirs with fiery eyes. However, most of the sky prides did not dare to act rashly. That was because there were more than 10 Empyrean walkers gathered in the middle of the medicinal field. Just by standing there, they were enough to intimidate the crowd. What do you guys think about how we should distribute these supreme elixirs? Shui Zheng of the Ethereal Rapture asked. How else can we distribute them? Whoever has the biggest fist will get the most. Xiao Lintian of the Heavenly Golden Palace sneered. Among the sky prides present, he was the strongest. Therefore, he was the most confident. Brother Xiao, you're very courageous indeed. However, can you single-handedly take on all of us? Ling Xiao said calmly. As soon as he said that, the other Empyrean walkers looked at Xiao Lintian with hostility. Xiao Lintian frowned and snorted coldly. Bullying the weak with numbers? Is this how you do things? Ling Xiao said, this is called joining forces to attack the strong. Xiao Lintian snorted. Although he was not afraid of anyone at the scene in a one-on-one fight. However, it was still a difficult task to deal with so many Empyrean walkers at the same time. Chapter 394. Ling Zhao's alliance forced Xiao Lintian to give in. The group of Empyrean walkers began to discuss the ownership of the herb farm. However, no one was satisfied with the outcome even after a long debate. The herb farm was too valuable. No one was willing to let it go so easily. I've already said that I want half of it. You guys can split the rest. Otherwise, I'll fight you all at once. I don't know who's going to lose then. Xiao Lintian said domineeringly. The rest of the Empyrean walkers looked troubled when they heard that. Half is too much. I'm the strongest here, so I should get the most. Xiao Lintian said. His words caused everyone to be speechless. The strongest would obtain the most. There wasn't any problem with these words. Oh, so the strongest should get the most? At that moment, an indifferent voice drifted into everyone's ears. Of course. Xiao Lintian did not notice anything and subconsciously replied. However, his expression suddenly stiffened in the next instant. The other Empyrean walkers' expressions changed too. Cries of surprise rose and fell from the crowd as they looked behind them. A peerless young man in a white robe had arrived at the herb farm and was standing behind everyone. Chu Kuangren. Ling Xiao called out that person's name with a serious expression. The other Empyrean walkers also looked grim and bitter. Why is this guy here too? The sages from the outside world let him in just like that? Competing with him for the opportunity of fortune? They think too highly of us. The Empyrean walkers smiled bitterly, especially Xiao Lintian. His expression kept changing, and a hint of fear appeared in his eyes. Chu Kuangren had left a huge psychological scar on him during the battle at the Empyrean Peak. He, the heavenly golden imperial physique, was defeated by Chu Kuangren in one move. He still could not believe it. Chu Kuangren slowly walked towards the crowd of Empyrean walkers. The crowd consciously opened up a path for him. Everyone looked at that white robe with a complicated gaze. There was fear, yearning, and fanatical worship. However, most of them felt helpless. What are we fighting for now that he's here? Forget it. Let's just treat it as a vacation. This is too sad. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Chu Kuangren slowly walked to the front of the herb field and smiled. I think it makes sense that whoever is the strongest will get the most. Hence, I shall take all of this herb field. After that, he raised his hand to activate the interspatial ring in his hand. Large amounts of precious medicines were collected by him. The Empyrean walkers' expressions changed at that sight. One of them could not help but yell, "Chu Kuangren, don't cross the line." However, Chu Kuangren completely ignored him. The Empyrean walker's expression darkened when he realized that he was being ignored. He then dashed towards Chu Kuangren in an attempt to stop him. However, Chu Kuangren gently waved his hand. A surge of Daoist rhymes suddenly erupted, gathering the energy of the earth and transforming it into a divine mountain that smashed onto the body of the world walker. Despite being an Empyrean walker, he did not stand a chance against Chu Kuangren's attack and was sent flying on the spot. "Chu Kuangren, do you really want to monopolize this herb farm? Don't go too far." Xiao Lintian couldn't help but question. Chu Kuangren looked at him and said, "Didn't you say that whoever is the strongest will get the most? Why, do you have a problem with that?" Xiao Lintian choked on his words and was speechless. Yes, he was the one who said that. It was not a problem for whoever was the strongest to get the most. However, Chu Kuangren had King taken away all the precious medicines. "Ling Xiao, let's attack together." Xiao Lintian secretly transmitted a message to Ling Xiao and the others. He signaled him with his eyes. "It's time for you to unleash your strategy of teaming up." However, Ling Xiao silently took a step back. Teaming up? That would only work if there was a chance of winning. With just the few of us, how can we fight against Chu Kuangren? I'm afraid we'll be taken out in one go. A minute. Xiao Lintian could not help but curse when he saw Ling Xiao retreating. He stared at Chu Kuangren with dissatisfaction in his eyes. He looked at the others. However, none of them were willing to step forward. They were well aware of Chu Kuangren's strength, and some of them who had not fought him before could guess his strength after witnessing Ling Xiao and the others' reactions. Hence, they did not dare to step forward. "What, do you want to fight?" Chu Kuangren said playfully. Minute Chu Kuangren, don't be too arrogant. Xiao Lintian said coldly, feeling extremely frustrated. He had always been the one being arrogant, but ever since he met Chu Kuangren, he had been humiliated time and time again. Initially, it was others who said the same thing to him, but now he was using it to criticize others. That feeling made him extremely dissatisfied. Get to the point. Are you going to fight or not? Chu Kuangren's gaze turned cold as he yelled. His battle intent soared as he yelled. All the Empyrean walkers at the scene were shocked and took a few steps back. Xiao Lintian could not help but shudder. Being stared at by Chu Kuangren, Xiao Lintian felt a chill rise from the soles of his feet all the way to the top of his head. No, we're not fighting," Xiao Lintian gritted his teeth and said with a slightly trembling voice. The other Empyrean walkers looked at Xiao Lintian with pity. He was the heavenly golden imperial physique, one of the strongest among the Empyrean walkers. However, he did not even have the courage to fight Chu Kuangren. That was just too ironic. If you don't want to fight, then what are you talking about? Chu Kuangren curled his lips and retracted his battle intent. Being said like this by him, Xiao Lintian could not refute a single word. Ling Xiao and the others felt even more pity for him. "Sai, you know you can't afford to offend Chu Kuangren, but you still insist on provoking him. Isn't that just asking for trouble? The almighty heavenly golden imperial physique is just short of being pointed at and scolded, yet you don't even dare to move. Who would believe you?" The crowd of Empyrean walkers was amazed. Soon, Chu Kuangren stored all the supreme elixirs into his yin and yang ring and took them away. Farewell, everyone. Before he left, Chu Kuangren even bid farewell to the crowd. The crowd forced a smile on their faces. Minute. "Farewell, my asteriscus, it's best if we don't meet again." After parting ways with Chu Kuangren, the crowd continued to explore the imperial palace. As the residence of an emperor, the emperor seemed to have intentionally left behind many opportunities of fortune here. Soon, the crowd found a new opportunity of fortune. It was a gigantic stone tablet. On the stone tablet, mysterious patterns were engraved that interweaved into a picture. In the picture, there was a person howling at the sky and swinging his fist. A terrifying Daoist rhyme circulated within it. There were also a few lines of small words on the stone tablet. Strike the stone tablet with the technique in the tablet to obtain the opportunity of fortune. The crowd's eyes lit up when they saw that. The meaning of this stone stele is for us to comprehend the cultivation technique recorded within it. Then we can use this cultivation technique to obtain the opportunities within the stone stele. The technique recorded on the stone tablet seems to be some kind of fist technique. Fist techniques are my forte. This opportunity of fortune is mine. It's still unknown who will understand it first. The crowd sat in front of the stone tablet and began to understand it. Then, they realized that the cultivation technique recorded on the stone tablet was very mysterious. It was even more obscure than most sage ruler techniques. I'm afraid this is a boundary emperor technique. Ling Xiao shook his head and said, Yes, it is indeed a boundary emperor technique. At that moment, a voice rang in Ling Xiao's ears. His face froze when he heard that voice, and he turned around helplessly. Brother Chu, why are you here again? Chapter 395. Brother Chu, why are you here again? It was none other than Chu Kuangren. He saw many people gathered in front of this stone tablet, so he came over out of curiosity. He also saw the small words on the stone tablet. With his understanding of Daoist techniques, he could tell at a glance that the stone tablet recorded a mysterious boundary emperor technique that was related to Fist Dao. He did not care about a boundary emperor technique. He had a few emperor techniques himself. However, he was quite interested in the opportunity of fortune in this stone tablet. Hence, he walked past the crowd and began to comprehend it. Everyone was surprised to see him, but they soon ignored him and began to comprehend the cultivation technique on the stone tablet. This opportunity of fortune was a test of one's comprehension, not their combat strength. What was there to be afraid of? They were all sky prides, and they were confident in their comprehension. They did not believe that their combat strength would lose to Chu Kuangren. Would they lose to him in terms of comprehension? Especially Xiao Lintian. He stared at the cultivation technique on the stone tablet with a proud look in his eyes. I cultivate Fist Dao, and this stone tablet also records a fist technique. With my comprehension, I'll be able to quickly comprehend it. Chu Kuangren, my combat strength may not be as strong as yours, but this opportunity of fortune is mine. I'll make sure you suffer once. Xiao Lintian could not help but laugh at the thought of Chu Kuangren being defeated. He could not wait to start comprehending the technique on the stone tablet. It was indeed a boundary emperor technique. However, with my abilities, I'll be able to comprehend it within 3 days. Xiao Lintian chuckled. Comprehending a boundary emperor technique in 3 days was an amazing feat even in the era of great battles where many sky prides were born. Just as Xiao Lintian was beginning to comprehend the technique, he suddenly heard Chu Kuangren's voice from beside him. Then Chu Kuangren raised his hand and clenched his fist. An incredibly powerful Daoist rhyme emanated, instantly shocking everyone. It was not because the Daoist rhyme was powerful, but because it was exactly the same as what was recorded on the stone tablet. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. He managed to comprehend it. What the hell? What's going on? Everyone was in disbelief. How long had it been since Chu Kuangren arrived? All he did was stand there and stare at the stone tablet for a while before he managed to comprehend this technique. Some of them hadn't even gotten into the zone yet. What a fantasy! This was simply a fantasy story. Boom! By then, Chu Kuangren had already unleashed a punch. The fist energy swept across the sky and landed on the stone tablet. The stone tablet trembled, and the pictures and Daoist rhymes on it gradually disappeared. Then a blood-red light shot out. It was a drop of red liquid that looked like fresh blood, but it exuded an extremely strong emperor's aura. This was a drop of emperor blood. All the cultivators stared at the monarch blood with burning eyes. It was rumored that even a drop of blood from an emperor had the power to change the world. Just a drop of emperor's blood was enough to change a person's aptitude, and it could even allow a saint's cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. No matter what it was very tempting. Sovereign bloodline? It's all right. However, Chu Kuangren was not as ecstatic as the others. An emperor's blood was indeed a rare treasure to the others, but to Chu Kuangren, who had seen too many treasures, it was just so. After all, he still had the female emperor's head in his yin and yang ring. A drop of blood was nothing compared to that head. However, Chu Kuangren could not refine that head, but this emperor's blood could. Its energy was comparable to the 9-headed snakelets and Huasha's corpses. I can't believe he really gained insight into a boundary emperor technique in such a short time. How is this possible? Xiao Lintian looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. After all, he had not even gotten into the zone yet. Not only Xiao Lintian, but the other Empyrean walkers also looked like they had suffered a huge blow. They felt a huge sense of defeat. Their combat strength was crushed, and so was their level of comprehension. What else could they do? Some of the Sky Prides who were not Empyrean walkers looked at the dejected Ling Xiao and the others and felt a sense of sympathy for them. Before these Empyrean walkers appeared in the world, they were already beaten by Chu Kuangren in all aspects. Competing with this guy's level of comprehension? Stop joking. I heard that a few years ago, he could already gain insight into 8,000 techniques in half a day. How terrifying. After all these years, his level of comprehension has become even more amazing. Now he can even gain insight into a boundary emperor technique in such a short time. Is this guy still human? Some of the Sky Prides discussed among themselves. They had long given up on comparing themselves to Chu Kuangren. That would only make things difficult for themselves. Is this guy really a cultivator from the same world as us? Don't tell me he's really a descendant of an immortal. Thousand Flower Valley's Empyrean walker, Feng Yaorao, said. Upon hearing what she said, the others also fell into deep thought. Chu Kuangren's appearance was outstanding, and his temperament was extraordinary. It did not seem that hard to accept that he was an immortal. Of course not. Immortals were ethereal. Who knew if they existed? However, Chu Kuangren was giving them a real blow. Buzz. At that moment, a ripple appeared in the void. It was as if the entire imperial palace was shaken. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. That layer of seal is about to disappear. All of a sudden, a burst of dazzling golden light erupted from the central area of the imperial palace, and a thick emperor's aura swept out. A golden palace suddenly appeared out of thin air. In an instant, extremely dense spiritual qi surged towards the palace. Bursts of auspicious lights appeared, golden lotuses circled in the sky, and Daoist rhymes echoed. All kinds of transformations showed that this palace was extraordinary. What's that? What a mysterious transformations. This must be the biggest opportunity of fortune in this imperial palace. Let's go and have a look. One by one, the Sky Prides dashed towards the palace that was suspended in the air. However, they were repelled by an invisible force. Unable to enter, they could only look at the golden palace anxiously. What's going on? We can't get in. What's going on? Hey, look, there's a plaque on this palace. I think it says, Qian Imperial Palace. What does that mean? Could it be that we're not in the Qian Imperial Palace, but this palace in front of us is the real Qian Imperial Palace? Even the Imperial Palace that isn't the Qian Imperial Palace has so many opportunities of fortune. I wonder what kind of opportunities of fortune are hidden in the real Imperial Palace. The crowd could not help but gulp as they stared at the Qian Imperial Palace. This is the real opportunity of fortune. At that moment, Ling Zhao's eyes lit up as he took out a jade amulet. The jade amulet let out a fluorescent glow that resonated with the Imperial Palace. A few Empyrean walkers also took out their own jade amulets. Among them were Xiao Lintian, Feng Yaorao, Shui Zheng, Gui Wuqiu, Yi Xian, and Li Fuping. A total of 7 people and 7 jade amulets. The records are right. Only those with jade amulets can enter the Imperial Palace and obtain the real opportunity of fortune left behind by the Qian Emperor. Xiao Lintian laughed out loud. The other Sky Prides looked at each other in confusion. What records about the Qian Emperor? Why have we never heard of it? But these Empyrean walkers seem to know about it. Chapter 396. When the Qian Imperial Palace appeared, Xiao Lintian and the others took out their jade amulets one after another. They were not too surprised by what they saw. The other sky prides, on the other hand, looked confused. Sigh, these unknown lands have a lot of resources. Perhaps they already knew that the Qian Imperial Palace would appear. One of the sage orthodoxies sighed. Compared to the Empyrean walkers, they were not only lacking in talent and resources, but they also lacked a long history. Chu Kuangren, you need the Qian Emperor's jade amulet to enter the Qian Imperial Palace. Don't tell me you don't know that? At that moment, Xiao Lintian said proudly. He finally found something to show off in front of Chu Kuangren. In his opinion, Chu Kuangren was a sky pride from the outside world. He would not know anything about the emperors, let alone the jade amulet. Besides, he definitely did not have the jade amulet with him. In other words, Chu Kuangren could not enter the Qian Imperial Palace. At that thought, he was extremely happy. Not only him, but Ling Xiao, Shuijing, Li Fuping, and the other Empyrean walkers also looked relieved. Chu Kuangren had given them too much pressure. They really did not have the ability to compete with Chu Kuangren. Now that Chu Kuangren could not enter the Imperial Palace, he could not compete with them for the Emperor's opportunity of fortune. They still had a chance. Fortunately, he doesn't have the jade amulet. Otherwise, Ling Xiao was talking when he suddenly saw Chu Kuangren playing with a glowing object from the corner of his eye. Looked like a jade amulet. Xiao Lintian, Ling Xiao, and the others were dumbfounded. They stared at the jade amulet in Chu Kuangren's hand. Why does he have a jade amulet? The Empyrean walkers felt like they had just seen hope, but it was mercilessly shattered. They looked at Chu Kuangren and wanted to cry. How did this happen? Why is the last jade amulet in Chu Kuangren's hand? Where did he get it from? How did this happen? After all, there were only 8 jade amulets. Since Xiao Lintian and the others had taken away 7 pieces, the last piece had to fall into Chu Kuangren's hands out of all people. This was too much of a coincidence. The Sky Prides looked at Xiao Lintian and the others with pity. This feeling is probably very uncomfortable. Sigh, I'm starting to wonder if Chu Kuangren is the son of the heavenly Tao. Why does he always get all the good stuff? Is this the so-called child of destiny? It's so sad to live in the same era as this kind of person. The Sky Prides shook their heads and lamented. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren looked at Xiao Lintian with a faint smile and said, "What did you say just now? You want to enter the Qian Imperial Palace to obtain a jade amulet, right? Don't you think it's a coincidence that I happen to have one with me?" Xiao Lintian almost spat out a mouthful of blood. But at this moment, a terrifying fluctuation came from the void. A black beam of light shot toward Feng Yaorao. The beam of light contained a sinister and deadly devil qi. Feng Yaorao was caught off guard and managed to muster her spiritual power to defend herself. However, she was still severely injured and sent flying. The jade amulet in her hand also flew out. A black shadow flitted across the void and grabbed the jade amulet before speeding towards the Qian Imperial Palace. It was Acheron Manor's Yuan Wudao. Damn it! Give me back my jade amulet. Feng Yaorao's expression changed as she gave chase. However, Yuan Wudao's sneak attack had severely injured her, so there was no way she could catch up. Just when she was panicking, a stream of light flashed past her and headed towards Yuan Wudao. In the blink of an eye, it had caught up to him. Yuan Wudao, who was rushing towards the Qian Imperial Palace, suddenly felt a terrifying pressure coming from behind him. It made his heart palpitate. Without saying a word, he immediately retaliated with a palm attack. Demonic qi gushed out like a tidal wave. That attack was so powerful that it shook the void. However, it was easily shattered by a pale palm. That palm then grabbed Yuan Wudao's neck and threw him in the opposite direction of the Qian Imperial Palace, smashing him onto the ground. With a boom, a huge crater was smashed into the ground, and cracks spread out in all directions like a spider web. The person lying in the crater was Yuan Wudao, who was in a sorry state. He looked at Chu Kuangren in horror. It was Chu Kuangren who had smashed him into the ground. Initially, he wanted to snatch Feng Yaorao's jade amulet and rush into the imperial palace when Chu Kuangren was not paying attention to snatch the emperor's opportunity of fortune. However, he did not expect to underestimate Chu Kuangren. Even if he was caught off guard, he was still caught by Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren, I didn't ask you for my jade amulet back when you took it from me. Are you going to stop me from taking someone else's jade amulet? Yuan Wudao asked loudly. His Daoist rhymes and demonic qi surged around his body, and his bandaged arm was releasing a blood-red mist as if something was trying to break free. It's none of my business whose jade amulet you're taking. However, didn't your sage pass my message to you? What message? Yuan Wudao was stunned. It seems like you guys really don't take my words seriously. Forget it, I'll tell you one more time, and that is, your life is mine. No one can stop it. As soon as Chu Kuangren finished speaking, he raised his hand and gathered the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth. A giant golden hand that was covered in Buddhist light descended from the sky. The terrifying pressure bore down on Yuan Wudao, and the demonic qi on his body began to disintegrate under the majestic Buddhist light. This palm attack was even more powerful than the one he encountered in the school of White Lotus and the demonic hoarder forefather's secret realm. He's gotten stronger in such a short time. The asterisk eminent, I guess I can only use this. Yuan Wudao let out a low growl, and the bandaged arm was suddenly burned to ashes by a blood-red flame. A ferocious demonic claw covered in blood-red scales appeared before everyone's eyes. A terrifying and evil scarlet demonic qi emanated from it. The Acheron Manor's blood dragon claw. Rumor has it that this blood dragon claw originated from a terrifying demonic beast in hell. After it was slain by the Acheron Manor's forefather, its claw was kept and refined into a top-tier boundary emperor weapon. However, due to its evil nature, no one could wield it. I can't believe Yuan Wudao managed to subdue it. Xiao Lintian, Ling Xiao, and the others were shocked. By then, Yuan Wudao's blood dragon claw had already collided with the gigantic golden palm. The terrifying energy erupted like a tidal wave, and the gigantic golden palm was forcefully shattered. Chu Kuangren, I'll show you the power of the blood dragon claw. After Yuan Wudao shattered the giant golden hand with a single strike, he leaped into the air and clawed at Chu Kuangren ferociously. Chu Kuangren immediately activated the human mountain stamp. With a palm attack, the human mountain stamp collided with the blood dragon claw. When the two energies collided, Chu Kuangren did not budge an inch, but Yuan Wudao was pushed back a few meters. However, that was enough to surprise Chu Kuangren. Since you're able to withstand that attack of mine, it seems that your arm has given you quite a bit of strength. Interesting. Chu Kuangren chuckled playfully and said with interest. Chu Kuangren, go to hell. Yuan Wudao roared and continued to attack. If one looked closely, they would see that the veins on his blood dragon claw were bulging and spreading to his neck. Even his left eye was bloodshot, exuding an inhuman brutality. Chapter 397. With the blood dragon claw, Yuan Wudao's combat strength had multiplied. With a swipe of his claw, it was as if he was going to tear the void apart. Crimson demonic qi filled the air and charged towards Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren easily shattered the demonic qi with a lift of his hand. The gap between their combat strengths was just too huge. Even with the blood dragon claw, Yuan Wudao could not bridge the gap. Go to hell. Go to hell. However, Yuan Wudao did not seem to notice the gap as he continued to swing his blood dragon claw. His eyes were bloodshot as if he had lost his mind. Chu Kuangren could tell that Yuan Wudao could not fully control the blood dragon claw and had been eroded by its demonic nature. If he used it for a long time, he would become a madman who only knew how to kill. No wonder he wrapped it in bandages earlier. It was to suppress the demonic nature of the blood dragon claw, Chu Kuangren said. After witnessing the power of the blood dragon claw, Chu Kuangren had no interest in continuing the fight. The long sword at his waist was unsheathed with a clang and slashed out. A purple sword ray streaked across the sky. It was as if it had covered half of the sky. In the eyes of countless onlookers, that stunning sword ray was the only thing left. Roar! Yuan Wudao let out an inhuman roar as the demonic qi in his blood dragon claw surged to its limit. The crimson demonic qi intertwined with an incredibly violent Daoist rhyme in the air before it transformed into a ferocious blood dragon shadow. The sword ray and the blood dragon shadow collided. A terrifying shockwave spread out. However, the blood dragon shadow did not even last for a breath before it was torn apart by the domineering sword ray. There was a loud crack. The sword ray pierced into his flesh. Blood splattered everywhere as the blood dragon claw was torn apart by the sword ray and detached from Yuan Wudao's body. The Empyrean walkers at the scene were shocked. It was too terrifying. The power of that sword ray was too terrifying. If it were them, they would have been defeated by that sword ray as well. When the blood dragon claw was severed, Yuan Wudao let out a heart-wrenching scream before he was sent flying like a broken kite. He landed on the ground with a pale face and looked at Chu Kuangren in horror. Having lost the blood dragon claw, he regained clarity of mind. However, at the same time, he also knew what kind of situation he was about to face. A great terror and fear enveloped him, and he could not help but tremble. Chu Kuangren sheathed his long sword and the sword rays that filled the sky disappeared. He raised his hand and grabbed the blood dragon claw, carefully examining it. This blood dragon claw was covered in fine scales and emitted a scarlet demonic aura and evil, as if the will of a dead demonic creature had yet to dissipate. Just this arm alone contained an incomparably vast amount of flesh and blood essence. It was not any weaker than a complete Saint Ruler corpse. While Chu Kuangren was examining the blood dragon claw, Yuan Wudao mustered the last of his strength to get up and escape. However, right after that, a terrifying power of the domain enveloped his body, pressing him to the ground like 100,000 mountains. You're still thinking of leaving in this state? I can't believe an Empyrean walker from Acheron Manor is so naive. Chu Kuangren kept the blood dragon claw and slowly walked towards Yuan Wudao. With every step he took, the murderous intent in his eyes intensified. Yuan Wudao lay on the ground and begged for mercy. Chu Kuangren, please let me go. I don't want the opportunities of fortune in the imperial palace. I'll give them all to you. I swear that I'll never oppose you again. Looking at the begging Yuan Wudao, Chu Kuangren said, Your fight for the opportunities of fortune in the imperial palace is a small matter. Opposing me is also a small matter. However, you've instructed the underworld palace to harm my Black Heaven sect's disciples. Not even a peak sage ruler can protect you. Chu Kuangren then raised his hand and slammed it onto Yuan Wudao's head. The majestic Buddhist light instantly blew Yuan Wudao's head into pieces. Then, he activated the gluttonous devouring technique and absorbed Yuan Wudao's body into the avarice dimension to refine. Surprisingly, he obtained a large amount of flesh and blood essence. His strength was no less than that of a great sage peak expert. Although Yuan Wudao's cultivation level was not at the great sage level, he possessed a top-notch Daoist physique. Hence, he still had quite a bit of flesh and blood essence. In the distance, Gui Wuchou's eyes lit up when he saw Chu Kuangren use the gluttonous devouring technique, but he quickly averted his gaze. Although he really wanted that technique, he was no match for Chu Kuangren. Hence, he had no choice but to give up on that idea. After dealing with Yuan Wudao, Chu Kuangren picked up the jade amulet from the ground. Feng Yaorao walked up to him from afar. She looked at Chu Kuangren and said gratefully, Brother Chu, thank you for retrieving my jade amulet. I'll remember your kindness forever. Ever since she was defeated by Chu Kuangren, she had developed some strange feelings for him. After witnessing Chu Kuangren's killing spree and his heroic spirit, she fell for him even more. Now that he had killed Yuan Wudao and retrieved her jade amulet, she finally confirmed her admiration for Chu Kuangren. What kind of girl would not be moved by a man like him? Feng Yaorao looked at Chu Kuangren with a dazed gaze. However, she soon realized that something was wrong. Chu Kuangren was playing with the jade amulet in his hand, but he had no intention of returning it to her. Brother Chu, can you return my jade amulet now? Who said that this jade amulet was taken for you? Chu Kuangren smiled. What? Feng Yaorao was dumbfounded. Something's not right. Why is this script not right? I suddenly have an idea. Chu Kuangren muttered to himself before he took out the sacred emerald sword case. One by one, treasured swords flew out from the sword case and formed a terrifying sword formation that surrounded all the Empyrean walkers at the scene. Terrifying sword chi surrounded the void, sending chills down their spines. That was a sword formation that could trap and even kill a sage ruler. Xiao Lintian, Ling Xiao, and the others did not have the strength to resist it at all. They could not help but feel terrified when they saw the sword formation before them. Chu Kuangren, what are you trying to do? Xiao Lintian asked loudly. Brother Chu, let's talk this out. Ling Xiao was puzzled as well. Everyone, you don't have to enter the Imperial Palace. Hand over your jade amulets, Chu Kuangren said with a smile. That was the idea he was talking about. He did want the Emperor's opportunity of fortune in the Imperial Palace. However, no matter how strong he was, he did not know what kind of test the Qin Emperor would set to select his successor. What if he was not suitable? What if something unexpected happened and he missed out on the opportunity of fortune? To ensure that he could obtain the opportunity of fortune, Chu Kuangren planned to let himself enter the Imperial Palace alone. With no other competitors, the opportunity of fortune would belong to him, right? Chu Kuangren silently gave himself a thumbs up for his quick-wittedness. The rest of the people had also seen through Chu Kuangren's plan. Each of them stared at him with their mouths agape, their faces filled with disbelief. F***me. Chu Kuangren, are you crazy? Deranged. You're too deranged. Xiao Lintian, Ling Xiao, and the others glared at Chu Kuangren. They were so angry that their bodies were trembling. The jade amulets were the proof of entry into the Imperial Palace. If they could enter the Imperial Palace, they would be able to fight for the Emperor's opportunity of fortune. Even if their opponent was Chu Kuangren, they still stood a chance. However, Chu Kuangren did not even give them that chance. If he did not allow them to enter the Imperial Palace, how could they fight for it? Chapter 398. The sword formation hovered in the air, trapping the Empyrean walkers within it. Ling Xiao, Xiao Lintian, and the others glared at Chu Kuangren as if they could not wait to devour him alive. However, Chu Kuangren remained calm under their stares and said, "Hand over the jade amulet. Don't force my hand." His tone was calm as if he was talking about something trivial. Everyone was so angry that they gritted their teeth. Chu Kuangren, aren't you being a little too presumptuous? Xiao Lintian took a deep breath and said, "If you don't hand it over, I have something even more presumptuous." Enough with the nonsense. I don't have time to waste with you guys. If you don't hand it over, I'll do it myself. By then, I can't guarantee that all of you will be alive, Chu Kuangren said. Everyone present felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. They knew very well that Chu Kuangren was not lying to them, and he definitely had the ability to do so. That was what they were most helpless and afraid of. Chu Kuangren, you win. Gui Wuqiu gripped the jade amulet tightly, but in the end, he could only helplessly throw it to Chu Kuangren. After all, he did not dare to fight Chu Kuangren with his life. Seeing that, the others helplessly handed over their jade amulets as well. They were extremely unwilling. That was a chance to fight for the Emperor's opportunity of fortune. Just like that, Chu Kuangren had forcefully snuffed it out. That's the way it should be. If everyone cooperates a little more, it'll save us a lot of trouble. I don't want to always play with everyone and be so violent. Chu Kuangren smirked and kept all the jade amulets. Hearing his words and looking at his smiling face, everyone was so angry that their mouths twitched. Even Feng Yaorao, who admired Chu Kuangren, felt that he was more demonic than the devil. The heart of a devil, the face of an immortal. It's so irresistible. Feng Yaorao licked her lips and said with a blushing face, "Chu Kuangren, aren't you afraid of divine retribution?" Xiao Lintian stared at Chu Kuangren and said fiercely, "Divine retribution? Could you please ask him if he dares to punish me?" Chu Kuangren stood with his hands clasped behind his back. It was as if his entire body had transformed into a peerless godly sword, and an overbearing sword-based Daoist rhyme emanated from his entire body. It was as if he was going to pierce a hole in the sky. Everyone present was shocked. Feng Yaorao clamped her thighs together tightly as she stared at the domineering Chu Kuangren. Her gaze became even more infatuated. Ling Xiao, Xiao Lintian, and the rest started cursing in their hearts. Damn it. He was too good at pretending. Heavens, can't you just strike this guy with lightning? They roared in their hearts. Clouds gathered in the sky and thunder rumbled. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw this. Could it be that the heavens had opened their eyes? Muffled thunder rumbled, and then the clouds dispersed and the sky cleared up. There was nothing else. Everyone was disappointed. Could it be that even the heavens were afraid of Chu Kuangren? Chu Kuangren kept his sword formation and dashed towards the imperial palace in a flash. Looking at his silhouette, everyone could only stand there and unleash their terrifying Daoist rhymes in all directions. Xiao Lindian punched out and fiercely blasted a palace at the side, turning it into ruins on the spot. Feng Yaorao clicked her tongue when she saw that. You guys didn't even dare to move when he was here. Now that he's gone, what's the use of getting angry at these rocks that don't even know how to fight back? Everyone's expressions turned even uglier when they heard her words. It may sound harsh, but Brother Feng is right. Let's look elsewhere and see if there are other opportunities of fortune. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and said. The rest of the people dispersed as well. Meanwhile, in the outside world, a group of sages looked at the imperial palace and saw the glorious palace that appeared out of thin air. Their faces were filled with excitement. That's the real imperial palace. Chu Kuangren definitely doesn't have a jade amulet with him to enter the imperial palace. The opportunities of fortune that he can obtain must be limited. One of the sages sighed in relief. The rest felt the same. However, at that moment, Black Willow Sage sighed helplessly. Actually, Chu Kuangren does have a jade amulet with him. At that, the hope that the sages had was mercilessly shattered. Black Willow Sage then told them about how Yuan Wudao's jade amulet was stolen. The sages gasped when they heard that. Damn it. Damn it, why is this guy's luck so good? Could he be a child of destiny? D****. There's no need to be so pessimistic. Chu Kuangren's strength is indeed the strongest, but the Emperor's opportunity of fortune doesn't just depend on strength. There are various tests involved, and it's not like our sky prides don't stand a chance. The Heavenly Golden Palace's Purple Void Sage said. Yeah, that's true. I guess that's the only way. They no longer cared who the Emperor's opportunity of fortune ended up in. As long as it did not fall into Chu Kuangren's hands, everything would be fine. Unfortunately, the Imperial Palace was surrounded by an invisible Emperor's aura. Their spiritual thoughts could not penetrate the palace. Otherwise, they would know that no one could compete with Chu Kuangren anymore. The only one who could enter the Imperial Palace was Chu Kuangren. What? At that moment, Black Willow Sage suddenly exclaimed. He was holding a communication compass in his hand, and his expression was grim as if he had received some news. Black Willow, what's wrong? A sage asked. Acheron Manor's Empyrean Walker is dead. Black Willow Sage said in a grim tone. Chu Kuangren, it must be Chu Kuangren's doing. He said that if he sees Yuan Wudao, he'll definitely kill him. I can't believe he really did it. He was furious. After all, Yuan Wudao was a peerless sky pride that Acheron Manor had painstakingly nurtured. He was a weapon that could help them fight for the Emperor's opportunity of fortune. Yet now, Chu Kuangren had forcefully snapped it in half. How could they bear that? Chu Kuangren, Acheron Manor will not let you off the hook, Black Willow Sage said in a deep voice. At that moment, Chu Kuangren, whom the sages were concerned about, had already entered the real Qian Imperial Palace. As soon as he entered, a majestic emperor's aura gushed towards him, making him want to submit to it. However, Chu Kuangren had experienced the aura of many emperors, and he even had a few emperor scriptures in his possession. To him, this emperor's aura was like a breeze that brushed past his face. He did not feel any pressure at all. Then, he began to observe the imperial palace. The first thing that caught his eyes were the 8 futons in the imperial palace. It was probably prepared for the 8 people who possessed the jade amulets. At that moment, a golden light appeared in front of the futons. An illusory figure appeared in front of Chu Kuangren. It was a man dressed in a golden robe with black hair that draped over his shoulders. His eyes were closed, and a powerful emperor's aura emanated from his body. Sky Prides of the future, I hope you've been well. The man opened his eyes, revealing a pair of eyes that were as bright as the stars. However, when he saw Chu Kuangren, he could not help but reveal a look of shock as if he had encountered something unexpected. You're the only one? The man asked in surprise. Chu Kuangren walked towards him and sat on one of the futons. He placed the 8 jade amulets one by one and smiled. That's right, I'm the only one. Chapter 399. That's right, I'm the only one. Chu Kuangren lined up the 8 jade amulets and said, Looks like I'm the only one who can accept this inheritance of yours, Qian Emperor. The man, who was the Qian Emperor, was dumbfounded. According to his calculations, the 8 jade amulets would be gathered in the imperial palace, and 8 top-notch sky prides would come forth to fight for his inheritance. Why was there only one left now? Did he miscalculate? Sky Pride of the future, tell me your name. Chu Kuangren. How did you get these 8 jade amulets? The Qian Emperor asked in confusion. They gave them to me themselves. Chu Kuangren pondered for a while before he smiled. Voluntarily? Does that matter? Nope. The Qian Emperor shook his head and said, Although you're alone, I can't just give you my opportunity of fortune. This test is a must. Of course, but before we begin, I have a few questions that have been bothering me for a long time. Would you mind answering them, Qian Emperor? Go ahead. Has the Qian Emperor fallen? Chu Kuangren looked straight at the Qian Emperor and asked. He could tell that the Qian Emperor before him was just a spiritual thought clone. Just like the mindful emperor that Chu Kuangren had met in the past. He hasn't fallen yet, the Qian Emperor said. Where is he? Up in the sky. Up in the sky. Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised, but he then asked curiously, could it be the legendary immortal realm? Do immortals really exist in this world? Nope, the immortal realm is vague. The sky I'm talking about is called the 9 heavens. The Qian Emperor smiled. What is the 9 heavens? Above the firmament is the 9 heavens. A higher level world? That's not accurate either. The 9 heavens was created by a group of emperors, just like how sages created the secret realms. Strictly speaking, it's not much higher than the firmament star. Then what's the purpose of the emperors creating the 9 heavens? Chu Kuangren had many questions. At this moment he wanted to clarify. To protect the firmament, the Qian Emperor said. What do you mean? Heaven's pride of the later generation, you ask a little too many questions. Once this strand of my spiritual will is activated, it won't last for long. Do you still want the opportunity one left behind? The Heaven Emperor didn't seem to want to continue speaking as he smiled faintly. Chu Kuangren narrowed his eyes. Alright, I understand. Are you ready to accept the test? Please. As soon as Chu Kuangren finished speaking, the glorious imperial palace in front of him suddenly disappeared. In its place was an ancient battlefield. A fierce battle was taking place on the battlefield. The battle was extremely chaotic, and it included cultivators of all races and levels. There were even many emperors' auras among them. This was an unparalleled battle that included emperors. In this great battle, Chu Kuangren seemed exceptionally small and insignificant. It was as if a random surge of energy was enough to destroy him. This is an illusion? Chu Kuangren muttered. He had still been in the Qian Imperial Palace just now, so it was impossible for him to suddenly appear on such a battlefield, so this was definitely a test set up by the Qian Emperor. Not bad, Sky Pride of the future. You're very smart. This is indeed my test. The Qian Emperor's voice rang in Chu Kuangren's ears. What are the requirements of your test, Qian Emperor? It's very simple. You just have to pass through this battlefield. Pass through this battlefield. Chu Kuangren looked at the endless army and the endless battlefield with a smile on his face. Is this a test of my Daoist core? I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, Qian Emperor. Chu Kuangren said. He got up and took a step forward, heading towards the end of the battlefield. At that moment, a horrifying surge of Daoist rhymes surged from beside him, and a powerful palm energy blasted towards Chu Kuangren. However, Chu Kuangren stood still with a calm expression on his face. When that palm energy landed on his body, it immediately shattered. It did not cause any damage to him at all. Chu Kuangren walked towards the end of the battlefield step by step. Along the way, the shockwaves from the battle and the Emperor's aura did not affect him at all. In other words, they did not affect his Daoist core at all. His Daoist core was as firm as a rock, and it could not be moved. How is this Sky Pride's Daoist core so firm? In the Qian Imperial Palace, there was a light screen in front of the Qian Emperor, and it showed the scene of Chu Kuangren crossing the battlefield. The Qian Emperor could not help but be shocked when he saw Chu Kuangren's calm and indifferent expression. It was indeed an illusory realm that tested one's Daoist core. However, knowing that it was an illusory realm and not being affected by it were two different things. Some illusory realms could be affected even if one knew it was an illusory realm. It was not impossible for one to die in an illusory realm. When an illusory realm was realistic to a certain extent, it was no different from reality. Those who did not have a strong Daoist core would easily fall into it. The illusory realm that the Qian Emperor had cast was called the Ashura illusory realm. Even the strongest sage would be affected by it. The Qian Emperor was only joking when he asked Chu Kuangren to cross the entire Ashura battlefield. He did not need to cross the entire battlefield. As long as he could satisfy the Qian Emperor, he would be considered to have passed the test. Initially, the Qian Emperor wanted all 8 Sky Prides to participate in this test together to see who could go the farthest. However, he did not expect Chu Kuangren to come alone. "Let me see how strong your Daoist core is," the Qian Emperor murmured. In the Ashura battlefield, Chu Kuangren crossed the battlefield. Countless energy waves landed on his body, but it did not affect him at all. At that moment, he had arrived at a sea of skeletons. This sea of skeletons was a part of the Ashura battlefield. Around Chu Kuangren, countless skeletons were wailing and screaming as they crawled towards him. Waves of resentment were crazily attacking his mind. How dare a mere vengeful spirit stand in my way? Chu Kuangren snorted. A Buddhist light appeared around his body, and a 1,000-foot-tall ancient Buddha appeared out of thin air. Under the endless Buddhist light, the thousands of skeletons turned into black qi and dissipated. Outside the illusory realm, the Qian Emperor was dumbfounded when he saw that. He's using his Daoist core to activate an emperor technique. This guy's Daoist core is no weaker than any emperor. Where did this monster come from? The Qian Emperor gulped and said. In the Ashura battlefield, Chu Kuangren used the Tathagata rebirth mantra to purify the sea of skeletons, causing the entire Ashura illusory realm to tremble. Huge cracks began to appear in the sky of the illusory realm. The Qian Emperor's body trembled when he saw that. His spiritual thought clone began to tremble violently as if it was frightened. The Ashura illusory realm can't withstand his Daoist core? The Qian Emperor said in shock. That scene was more shocking than Chu Kuangren crossing the entire Ashura battlefield. The test is over. The Qian Emperor waved his hand and dispersed the Ashura illusory realm. Chu Kuangren, who was in front of him, slowly opened his eyes and said, "Why did you suddenly dispel the illusory realm? Don't you want to continue?" The Qian Emperor rolled his eyes. "Continue? Let's see how you're going to destroy my illusory realm, shall we?" "You've successfully passed the test," the Qian Emperor said. "Oh, is that all?" Chu Kuangren's eyes were filled with disappointment. "That's all? That's all the Emperor's test?" Chapter 400. You've passed the test and are now qualified to receive my inheritance. The Qian Emperor smiled. Then he took out 3 items with a wave of his hand. They were a wooden box, a light yellow booklet, and a pitch-black armor that emanated a murderous aura. Other things aside, just that armor alone was enough to make Chu Kuangren's eyes light up. Through his treasure-locating skill, he could clearly sense that this armor was an extremely powerful, Emperor Weapon. In the wooden box is a scroll. This book is an emperor scripture that I've compiled, and it records some of my cultivation experiences. As for this armor, it's an emperor weapon that I obtained a long time ago. Since I already have an emperor weapon of the same type, I've left it here. These 3 items are the opportunities of fortune that I've left here. Future Sky Pride, before this spiritual thought dissipates, let me tell you one more thing. This is an era of great battles. After hundreds of thousands of years of Dharma decline, the era of great battles has turned from decline to prosperity. It's not just firmament star, but the 9 heavens are also fighting for the opportunities of fortune to become an emperor. And this opportunities of fortune to become an emperor lies in firmament star. Therefore, more sky prides will appear in the future, and the orthodoxies in the 9 heavens will not sit idly by. Many of these orthodoxies have been passed down since ancient times, and they've left behind a complete emperor's inheritance. They're not easy opponents, so you must take care. The Qian emperor smiled. After all, Chu Kuangren was a sky pride who had received his inheritance. Hence, the Qian emperor did not want to see Chu Kuangren fall in the emperor's path so early. People from the 9 heavens, huh? I'm looking forward to it. Chu Kuangren chuckled. Perhaps there's something else besides the 9 heavens. Are you referring to? The Qian emperor pointed to the ground. Chu Kuangren's heart skipped a beat. The underworld demonic realm? The Qian emperor nodded. Chu Kuangren pondered for a while before the smile on his face widened. Looks like things are getting more and more lively. After that, he kept the opportunities of fortune that the Qian emperor had left behind and stood up to bow. Thank you, Qian emperor, for the opportunities of fortune. It's fine. Other than me, the fortuitous encounters of the other emperors are about to appear. How much you can obtain from them will depend on your luck. Emperor Qian smiled faintly and his figure started to dissipate. I understand. Farewell, Heaven Emperor. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly and bowed again. The Qian emperor stared deeply into Chu Kuangren's eyes before he disappeared completely. In the instant that the Heaven Emperor's spiritual will incarnation dissipated, the entire Heaven Emperor palace shook and the auspicious signs that filled the sky also gradually disappeared. With a boom, the Qian imperial palace fell from the sky onto the ground, becoming no different from the other palaces around it. There was nothing mystical about it at all. The sudden change attracted the attention of many people. Many of them knew that it must have something to do with Chu Kuangren who had entered the imperial palace. What's going on? Did Chu Kuangren obtain the emperor's opportunity of fortune? That must be it. Otherwise, how could this happen? Damn it. Xiao Lintian, Ling Xiao, and the rest ran to the landing the arch palace. Chu Kuangren slowly walked out. Chu Kuangren, have you already obtained that emperor's opportunity of fortune? Xiao Lintian could not help but ask. Chu Kuangren did not answer. Instead, he turned around and walked out of the imperial palace. To him, this place was no longer worth exploring anymore. After all, he had already obtained the biggest opportunity of fortune. Before he left, he took out a few jade amulets and threw them back to Xiao Lintian and the others. Here, this is for you guys. Seeing that, Xiao Lintian and the others were so angry that their faces turned green. If the emperor's opportunity of fortune has been taken by you, what use do we have for these jade amulets? Xiao Lintian looked at Chu Kuangren's back. With a crack, the jade amulet in his hand was crushed into pieces and thrown to the ground. In a flash, he rushed towards the imperial palace. However, the imperial palace was deserted. There was not a single person in sight. They searched the entire imperial palace but could not find a single opportunity of fortune. Obviously, the opportunity of fortune had already been taken by Chu Kuangren. Although they had expected this outcome, they were still very dissatisfied. Outside the imperial palace, the sages noticed that the emperor's aura that surrounded the imperial palace had completely dissipated. They all rushed in and headed towards the Qian imperial palace. Here they saw Xiao Lintian and the others. The purple void sage quickly asked, Linen, who took the emperor's opportunity of fortune? He noticed that Xiao Lintian's expression did not look too good. He had some guesses in his heart, but he still asked with a glimmer of hope. Chu Kuangren. Xiao Lintian gritted his teeth and said. Hearing that, the sages could not help but smile bitterly. It's really him. This guy really doesn't leave any room for maneuver. He's already a monster. Now that he has obtained the emperor's inheritance, I wonder what level he'll reach. The sages discussed among themselves, and their hearts could not help but tremble. Not only that, but he also took the jade amulets from us. He didn't give us any chance to compete with him. Xiao Lintian said again. The sages were furious when they heard that. How can this Chu Kuangren be so insane? D***minute, I can't believe he would go this far. Was Chu Kuangren the one who killed the Empyrean walkers of Acheron Manor? At that moment, Black Willow Sage asked. Xiao Lintian nodded. It's really him. Black Willow Sage gritted his teeth. He looked around and said to the sages, Everyone, we can't just sit here and do nothing. Chu Kuangren's existence has completely hindered the progress of our orthodoxy's sky prides. Think about it. If more emperor's opportunities of fortune appear in the future, and only sky prides are allowed to compete for it, who else can stop Chu Kuangren? Are we really going to give all the emperor's opportunities of fortune to Chu Kuangren? We have to do something. Black Willow Sage's words made all the sages fall into deep thought. Purple Void Sage took a deep breath and said, Brother Black Willow, you're right. I'll go back and tell the Palace Lord about this. In short, if we can't stop Chu Kuangren's momentum, our orthodoxy's sky prides can only live in his shadow forever. Hearing that, the sages' hearts trembled. The sky prides were the future of their orthodoxies. If Chu Kuangren defeated them too badly, it would leave a shadow in their hearts. It would definitely hinder their cultivation, and in more serious cases, they might even be crippled. At that thought, the sages felt a chill down their spines. Chu Kuangren was not only stopping them from competing for the emperor's opportunities of fortune, but he was also destroying the future of their orthodoxies. If this could be tolerated, how could it be tolerated? Chu Kuangren must not be allowed to live. Some of the sages had the same thought. No, we must discuss this with the sect leader when we return. Chu Kuangren's threat is too great. It's far beyond our previous estimation. If we don't get rid of him now, there will be endless troubles in the future. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren had no idea that the sages were about to do something to him. He was on his way back to the Black Heaven sect. He had gained a lot from this trip to the Imperial Palace. The one that pleased him the most was the Emperor weapon. He had seen the Empyrean Neptune's trident halberd's power, so he was looking forward to it. Chapter 401. Black Heaven Sect, inside the towering Heaven Palace. Chu Kuangren was taking inventory of his gains from his trip to the Imperial Palace. He had gained a lot from this trip. Apart from the 3 treasures he had obtained from the Qian Imperial Palace, the sovereign blood and precious medicines were also quite valuable. Just that pile of supreme elixirs alone was enough to drive many sage orthodoxies crazy. Coupled with the serpent deity's treasury that Chu Kuangren had obtained from the outer seas, it was foreseeable that the Black Heaven sect would enter a period of rapid development. This scroll is one of the 9 emperor techniques. Chu Kuangren was quite surprised when he opened the wooden box given by the Qian emperor. That was because the wooden box contained one of the emperor technique scrolls that Chu Kuangren had once obtained. What a coincidence! Chu Kuangren looked at the scroll in his hand and opened it. After studying it for a while, he realized that it was an emperor technique called the Heaven Morning Palm. As the name suggested, it was an emperor art related to grief. The heart-piercing finger, raging God's fist, and Heaven's grief palm are all related to the Daoist core or the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Are the other emperor techniques the same? Chu Kuangren muttered as he kept the Heaven's grief palm away. He shifted his gaze to the other 2 items. They were the imperial scriptures and the black-armored imperial weapon. Chu Kuangren decided to refine that emperor weapon first. With the experience of refining the sea god's halberd last time, it was easy to refine this emperor weapon this time. About 3 days later, Chu Kuangren was almost done refining this emperor weapon. He did not know if it was the will of the heavens, But after refining this emperor weapon, he found out that this emperor weapon was called the innate ferocious armor. This emperor weapon complemented his infallible tormented body very well. After digesting most of the opportunities of fortune that he had obtained from the imperial palace, Chu Kuangren came out of his closed-door meditation. However, even though he had come out of seclusion, he was not idle. When he thought of what the Heaven Emperor had once said, he felt a vague sense of anxiety in his heart. It was not that he was worried that he could not compare to the so-called people of the nine heavens, or the demon world of hell, with his current abilities. Unless a martial emperor appeared or he was surrounded by a sage king, he was not afraid of anyone in this world. The reason why he felt anxious was because of the Black Heaven sect. In the era of great battles, various forces appeared one after another, each stronger than the last. With the strength of the Black Heaven sect, it would be impossible for him alone to get a share of the pie in this era of great competition. Looks like we need to find a way to quickly increase everyone's strength, especially Nangong Huang and the other Daoist strength. No matter what, we should at least be able to fight against the Empyrean walkers, right? Chu Kuangren murmured. If a cultivator wanted to quickly increase his strength, there were only a few things he could do. Spiritual power, Dao aura, equipment, cultivation techniques. I can use elixirs to raise my spiritual energy. In terms of Daoist aura, other than the Mystic Origin Imperial Sutra and the Qian Imperial Sutra that I just obtained, I've pretty much comprehended the other two Imperial Sutras. Equipment? There's a pile of sacred weapons in the Serpent Deity's treasure vault. I'll distribute them when the time comes. As for cultivation methods, I know quite a few of them. However, ordinary sage techniques won't be of much help to them, Chu Kuangren pondered. Then he went to the pill hall. Compared to a few years ago, the pill hall now had an additional place called the Heavens Flourish Lodge, and this Heavens Flourish Lodge was the holy land in the eyes of all the Black Heaven sect's alchemists. This was because there was a mysterious being in the Heavens Flourish Lodge who was well-versed in almost all alchemy knowledge since ancient times. No matter what problems the alchemists encountered, they would be able to obtain answers there. Chu Kuangren arrived at the Heavens Flourish Lodge. However, when he arrived, there was already someone inside. That person was a disciple of the pill hall. At this moment, he was asking the mysterious being in the Heavens Flourish Lodge for advice on alchemy. He told him his questions. "Sir, may I know the answer to this question?" The disciple of the pill hall asked. "This question of yours is too simple. If you don't even know such a simple question, you should go back and strengthen your foundation first." An old voice sounded in the Heavens Flourish Lodge. The disciple of the pill hall blushed, but he did not dare to refute. It was said that even alchemy master Gujiang had to be respectful in front of this mysterious being. It was said that Master Gujiang once had an argument with this mysterious being over a pill recipe, but he was scolded until he was speechless. Since then, Gujiang had been worshipping this being like a god. If Gujiang was like that, what more a mere disciple like him? "I'll remember your teachings, sir." The disciple quickly bowed and replied before he slowly retreated. When he turned around, he saw Chu Kuangren at the door. "Greetings, sect leader." The disciple quickly bowed. He did not expect that the sect leader, who was rarely seen, would appear here. It was his first time being so close to Chu Kuangren, so he was a little excited. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly. "Someone, ask your question." The old voice of the Heavens Flourish Lodge appeared and said to Chu Kuangren, "It's fine if you play tricks in front of others, but how dare you do it in front of me? Aren't you afraid that I'll slap you?" Chu Kuangren chuckled. Upon hearing that, the disciple who had not completely retreated was speechless. This was a senior that countless alchemists, and even Master Gujiang worshipped like a god. How dare the sect leader talk to him like that? He even wants to slap me? God, the sect leader is indeed the sect leader. The admiration in that disciple's eyes became more obvious. After that disciple had completely left, an item that looked like a Rubik's Cube appeared in front of Chu Kuangren. It was the legendary item that Chu Kuangren had previously drawn, the Vitality Pill Tome. From the Rubik's Cube, a little boy with pigtails and a red doo-doo emerged. This boy was the mysterious existence that everyone in the Black Heaven sect talked about as if he was a god. He was also the item spirit of the Vitality Pill Tome. Master, please save me some face in front of outsiders. How am I supposed to teach these people in the future if you keep behaving like this? The item spirit, Lil Tion, said. He looked like a 7 or 8-year-old child, but his voice sounded like an old man. It sounded a little weird. Speak normally. Ahem, I'm used to it. Lil Tion coughed twice and returned to his original voice. He then circled around Chu Kuangren. Master, is there anything you need from me today? Yes, I'm looking for a safe, stable, and fast-paced medicinal pill, Chu Kuangren said. Upon hearing that, Lil Tion's little face twisted. Master, you're making things too difficult for me. Not only do I need a safe, stable, and fast-paced medicinal pill, it's a win-win situation. There haven't been many medicinal pills like this since ancient times. Why can't you do it? Chu Kuangren smiled. How is that possible? I'm the great item spirit of the Vitality Pill Tome, Lil Tion. What kind of medicinal pill can stump me? Lil Tion then turned into a golden ray of light and entered the Rubik's Cube to search for the medicinal pill that Chu Kuangren needed. Not long after, a few medicinal pill manuals appeared in front of Chu Kuangren. The Supreme Clarity Pill, the Harmonious Spirit Rejuvenation Pill, and the Jade Marrow Golden Pill. The first two are Sage-grade medicinal pills, and the last one is a Boundary Sage-grade medicinal pill. They all meet your requirements, Master, Lil Tion said proudly. Well done. Chu Kuangren smiled in satisfaction. Then, he thought of something and took out the soul rejuvenation herb that he obtained from the serpent deity's treasury. Do you know what this is? This is the soul rejuvenation herb. Lil Tion looked at the soul rejuvenation herb and exclaimed. Chapter 402. That's the soul-benefiting grass. Lil Tion exclaimed. He circled around the soul benefit grass and said, This soul benefit grass is an extremely rare treasure medicine that can be used on the soul. If you can refine it into a treasure pill, it can nourish the soul. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. Do you have any pill recipes here? Of course there is. Waving his hand, Lil Tion produced a pill recipe. Yin Yang Soul Pill, using the soul-nourishing grass as the main ingredient, along with 33 kinds of yin and 16 kinds of yang herbs. Using the power of yin and yang, it can strengthen soul energy. Chu Kuangren glanced at the pill recipe. Other than the most precious soul benefit herb, the rest of the herbs were precious as well, but they were nothing to the current Black Heaven sect. He was fully capable of getting it. If I can successfully concoct this pill, my soul energy will be strengthened. At that time, I will be able to use the sovereign armament for a longer period of time. Chu Kuangren murmured as his eyes lit up. The monarch armament was his greatest trump card. However, due to the limitations of his cultivation, the amount of time he could use the imperial armament was not long. Thus, the consumption on his mind was simply too great. If he could strengthen his soul, he would naturally be able to use the imperial armament for a longer period of time. To him, this was undoubtedly a great benefit. If he wanted to do it, he did it. After learning about alchemy from Lil Tion, he found someone to get all the herbs needed to refine the Yin Yang Soul Pill. Other than that, he was also preparing to refine a batch of pills that could quickly increase one's spiritual power cultivation. He was going to give them to Nangong Huang, Murong Xian, and the others. For the next few days, Chu Kuangren spent most of his time in the alchemy hall. Everyone could only see dense pill clouds appearing in the sky above the pill hall from time to time. Auspicious phenomena kept appearing. Approximately 7 days later, Chu Kuangren had successfully refined the Yin Yang Soul Pill along with a few dozen bottles of pills that could increase one's spiritual power. He gathered Nangong Huang and the others in the towering Heaven Dao Palace. The reason I've gathered all of you here today is to give you something. Chu Kuangren looked at the Daoists before him and took out some medicinal pills. This is the Jade Marrow Golden Pill. It can quickly improve your spiritual power. Take it back and take one every 10 days. It will increase your spiritual power by more than 10 times. I want all of you to raise your cultivation base to the supreme honorable realm within a year. Can all of you do it? Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Upon hearing his words, all the Daoists looked at each other. One had to know that Nangong Huang, who had the highest cultivation level among them, was only a mid-stage honorable. How could he reach the supreme honorable realm within a year? This request was too harsh. However, no one doubted Chu Kuangren's words. Sure. Nangong Huang nodded and said solemnly, I'll definitely become an honorable supreme within a year. Morong Xian and the others also promised with a serious look on their faces. Chu Kuangren could see the determination in their eyes. He smiled in satisfaction. Very good. Then, he took out the Enlightened Heart Imperial Sutra and Eternal Imperial Sutra and said with a faint smile, These are 2 Imperial Sutras. I'll place them on the highest floor of the scripture depository. You guys can read them yourself. As soon as the Emperor scripture appeared, a thick Emperor aura spread out. Everyone's expression changed, and they resisted with all their might. They stared at the Emperor's scripture in Chu Kuangren's hands in horror. Emperor's scripture? It was the imperial scripture that countless cultivators dreamed of. And there were 2 of them. Nangong Huang and the others were speechless. After all, the Emperor's inheritance had been lost in the firmament star for so many years, so Emperor scriptures were too rare. However, Chu Kuangren had given away 2 of them at once. Not many people from the unknown lands could afford to spend so much money like that. The Emperor's scripture is an emperor's understanding of the Tao of cultivation. However, I still have to say that everyone's path of cultivation is different. Even an emperor may not be completely suitable for you. Therefore, it's fine to comprehend it, but don't copy it completely. Cultivation depends on the individual. In my opinion, a cultivator's true achievement does not lie in becoming an emperor, but in finding their own Tao. Chu Kuangren said in a powerful voice. The moment he said that, Daoist rhymes seemed to reverberate in the sky. The sages in the depths of the Black Heaven sect seemed to have sensed it. They looked in the direction of the towering heaven palace with a thoughtful look on their faces. Just a few words have caused the Tao to resonate. I'm afraid the sect leader's understanding of the Tao has far surpassed that of the sages. Black Heaven's second forefather said emotionally. That's not surprising. The sect leader has killed sages as if they were dogs. I don't believe that his understanding of the Tao is below that of a sage. Black Heaven's third forefather chuckled. That's true. Inside the towering heaven palace. Chu Kuangren seemed to have realized something after he said those words. His understanding of the Tao was too deep. After all, there weren't many people like him who could possess 4 emperor scriptures and completely comprehend them. In terms of understanding of the Tao alone, he was not much weaker than an emperor. The only thing he lacked was that he had yet to find his own Tao. This was something he was still trying to figure out. After giving some instructions, Chu Kuangren took out some of the treasures he obtained from the serpent deity's treasury and distributed some to Nangong Huang and the others. Before they left, Nangong Huang and the others were beaming with joy. Today's trip was undoubtedly a great fortune for them. Not to mention the others, just the jade marrow golden pills alone were already extremely amazing. Even if they searched through all the sage orthodoxies, they would not be able to find more than a handful of them. However, each of them had 3 bottles each, and each bottle contained 12 pills. Not to mention the 2 emperor's scriptures. Anything that could be related to an emperor was a great opportunity of fortune, let alone the emperor's scriptures that recorded the emperor's understanding of the Tao of cultivation. It could be said to be one of the most precious emperor-grade treasures. Lan Yu, this is as far as we can go. Nangong Huang said to Lan Yu, who was sending them to the door. Lan Yu looked at them from the door with a serious look in her pale blue eyes. Don't let master down. The few of them were shocked when they heard her words. They only knew that their trip to the towering heaven palace was a fruitful one, so they were immersed in joy. However, they had neglected the deeper meaning behind Chu Kuangren's actions. He had given them supreme pills, emperor scriptures, and all kinds of treasures. If he did not have such great expectations for them, why would he spend so much effort to nurture them? At that thought, everyone's expression gradually became solemn. We won't let you down, sect leader. That's right. From tomorrow onward, I'll double my training. Nangong Huang, Murong Xian, and the others said. They were Daoists of the Black Heaven sect, and they could be said to be the future pillars of the Black Heaven sect. Not to mention the high expectations that Chu Kuangren had placed on them, just their identity as Daoists alone was enough for them to work hard. Inside the towering Heaven Palace, Chu Kuangren stood under a tree. Lan Yu walked up to him. Master, Nangong Huang and the others have left. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly. I understand. The situation in Firmament Star is changing, and as the center of the storm, I'll become the target of everyone sooner or later. Nangong Huang and the others are shouldering the future of the Black Heaven sect, so I hope they can grow faster and take charge of things on their own. He took out a yin and yang ring and handed it to Lan Yu. I've prepared these for you. They'll be beneficial to your cultivation. Thank you, Master. Lan Yu gripped the yin and yang ring tightly, her eyes flashing with determination. She desired to become stronger more than anyone else. Only then could she continue to help Chu Kuangren. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.